This is a public hearing of the Zoning Board of Appeals. The zoning ordinance empowers us to hear references from the City Council, petitions from other parties for variances and special uses, and appeals from decisions of the zoning administrator. We hear testimony from those in attendance and then make formal findings of fact based on the evidence presented, which consists of testimony and exhibits and on our knowledge of the community. We then either make a determination or recommendation to the City Council. All testimony is taken under oath. Although we do not apply the strict rules of evidence and procedures, we ask that you keep your testimony relevant to the proposal as it relates to the standards contained in the zoning ordinance. When you testify, please state your name and address for the record, and please print your name on the sign-in sheet provided outside the door if you'd like to speak at this meeting. Each case will be introduced by staff, and a list of documents will be read into the record. Then the applicant will give an explanation of the proposal. After that, those who wish to testify as either proponents or opponents of the case will have the chance to do so, and then the applicant will have a chance to respond. Any case not concluded at tonight's hearing will be continued to our next meeting. Melissa, please call the roll.
Mary McCauley,
Present.
Lisa Deacon, Violetta Cullen,
Present.
Scott Gingold, Kirill Miranchev,
Here.
Mirna Iravallo, and Jill Zordan. Here.
Okay. I will now swear in anyone who plans to give testimony of any of the cases scheduled for tonight. Please raise your right hand if you plan to speak. Do you swear and affirm that the testimony you will provide in connection with this case will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Thank you. Okay. Our first case, we need approval of the meeting minutes from June 18th. Has everyone had a chance to read them? Would someone like to make the motion for approval?
I move that we approve the minutes from the meeting of.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, no changes. Okay, our first case of 747 Howard Street will not be heard tonight. So the first case that we're hearing tonight is 2211 Maple Avenue. Is the respondent here?
Just to clarify for everyone, the development plans are the same that we saw at the last zoning board hearing. However, we do have some additional letters of support, letters of opposition, a petition of opposition, and a letter from the alderman as well that have all been handed out to the zoning board, and some documents from the applicant regarding financials that were handed out at the beginning of the meeting.
This case was heard at the June 18th ZBA hearing and was continued with the testimony still open. The proposal remains the same, but the applicant has provided the additional information as requested by the ZBA. Okay, Melissa, you want to read it into the record?
We don't need to since it was already read in. But also just to note for anyone who didn't hear last time, the Zoning Board of Appeals is the determining body for this case because there is no longer a parking variation involved. So if a decision is made tonight, it will be made by the Zoning Board, and that will be the final step.
And Madam Chairman, I have written out findings of fact for a major variance. We submitted an application with the findings that are required for the application, but for the zoning ordinance findings, I'm going to address these out loud, but if you don't mind, I'd like to approach and provide this final document to you.
Did you get that?
You didn't submit this before, right?
No.
Thank you. We'll consider it to be exhibit, what, A of this proposal.
May I proceed?
Please proceed.
As we submitted last time, we showed plans for a 15-unit apartment building at this address, and we went through extensively the design plans. We also talked extensively about the IHO ordinance and the benefits of that and the certain allowances or bonuses that are provided by the IHO ordinance and the public benefit by providing 2 on-site affordable housing units for this project. We're not going to repeat that, thankfully, for everyone. But I would like to talk about what's new since we concluded or continued the public hearing last time. First, you heard last time a few single-family property owners who were opposed to this, and I know you had received written opposition to this. What you did not have last time is any word, one way or the other, from the properties that immediately surround this property. As we showed to you, we had an exhibit that showed this property is wholly surrounded by large multiple family buildings. We have since reached out to all of those owners, and we have the support of every single one of those owners that surround the property. So that would be 2219 Maple, 2201 Maple, 2210 Maple, 2157 Ridge, 2201 to 09 Ridge. They've all, I believe, submitted in writing their support, and at least one of the property owners who owns, or their representative who owns property, the apartment building to the immediate north and to the immediate south, is here to testify in support of this project. My client has spoken to the owners of 2225 Ridge and 2213 Ridge, also multiple family apartment building owners in the R5 district in this block. They too have no objection to this. They just have not been able to find time to put into documentation their written support, but they don't object to it, and you don't have any objection from them. So I wanted to point out that when you, and we'll get to the findings of fact, but will this have an adverse impact on the neighborhood? And consider the immediate neighborhood, which are the buildings that surround this property. Every single property owner supports it. They don't believe there will be any adverse impact. In fact, we sat down for an hour with the management individual and the representative of the building to the north and the south who would be most directly impacted by this development to review the plans. We addressed things like stormwater, security lighting, access, walkways, garbage disposal, what the construction phasing is going to be like, and many, many other questions over the course of an hour. And they were satisfied that this is a good project for the neighborhood, will not adversely impact their buildings on either side of this, and they fully support it. Additionally,
I'm sorry, can I ask you a question related to that?
Sure.
Did you engage the neighbors in those meetings with the other property owners and property managers? Because I saw that there was a letter of support from a property manager, but not necessarily the property owner. And then I saw that Garrett Theological Seminary, which owns the property to the south,
And the north,
had voiced support. Are they here to testify?
they are here.
Okay, that's great, because I just wanted to know that they,
Yeah.
at the time, they said they had not seen the plans. And again, I think that it would be helpful if those meetings could have taken place with the other community members who have such concerns and worries about this.
Sure. And one of the issues I think had to do with the addresses on the tax records. So, for example, Garrett Theological Seminary never got notice of the
Right.
public hearing.
Because they don't pay taxes.
Because they don't pay taxes. So we had some difficulties, and we've tried to resolve those by subsequently reaching out to everyone.
Right.
And in the cases where you got a letter from a property manager, that was after consulting with the owner, because the property manager did not have authority to write a letter without the owner's blessing.
Thank you.
Just moving on to what else is new besides that support, and I don't want to diminish, I think, the support of this area. We don't have the exhibit up. Adam, can we not get that tonight? No? It was an aerial exhibit that showed the surrounding properties and the density of the surrounding properties.
Would be in the original presentation.
No.
My presentation. Would also be.
I'll move on though, while you're trying to find that. I just want to also mention that we submitted preliminary stormwater engineering plans, which is something that the ZBA requested, that those plans were reviewed by the city engineer and found, at least on a preliminary basis, it complies with the stormwater management ordinance, basically saying that providing on-site stormwater management on this property is feasible. And it's going to be a combination of bioswales filtration as well as an underground storage vault. And as you've probably heard from past presentations, those underground storage vaults are extremely expensive, but they're a very effective means of trapping stormwater on site, releasing it at a release rate into the public storm sewer, and thereby eliminating any adverse impact on the surrounding properties. So that's, there you go. So that exhibit depicts kind of the R5 area, or at least a portion of the R5 zoned areas and the large apartment buildings and their density that surrounds this property. And I just wanted to point out that every one of those property owners now supports this project. That would be across the street, north, south, et cetera. So, and I will kind of rush through this because I don't want to take so much of your time tonight, but as far as the standards for a major variance, the first one is whether the variance, or that the variance will not have a substantial adverse impact on the use, enjoyment, or property values of adjoining properties. And we have the adjoining property owners saying, in their opinion, there will be no adverse impact. What are potential adverse impacts from allowing a 15-unit dwelling building on this property? One could be parking. However, we are providing parking in compliance with the zoning ordinance in that there are 15 off-street parking spaces. Additionally, the owner has agreed to a suggestion by the ZBA to prohibit tenants from parking on the street, meaning they cannot obtain a residential parking permit. So will this development result in a parking problem on the street? We believe the answer is clearly no. Will it result in more congestion in the public street with a 15-unit building? Again, because there's off-street parking for the vehicles, they're limited to one vehicle per unit. This is a TOD area with public transportation that's walkable. There's community retail that's walkable, whether it's a dry cleaner, restaurants, et cetera. We don't believe that adding 15 dwelling units is going to result in adverse congestion, traffic, and certainly not parking. We've submitted stormwater plans. This will not create adverse stormwater impacts. It's not going to create adverse light, noise, et cetera, on properties a block away. So one of the questions would be, what about the height? We are within the height limitation of the zoning ordinance. We are at 52 feet. We can go as high, I believe, as 55 feet. The neighboring properties, I believe we calculated the maximum height of their parapet walls at 45 feet. 42 to 45 feet. So the question would be, if you're a resident, let's say a single family resident from a block or two away who's walking down this street, is a 55 or 52 foot height building going to create an adverse impact versus a 45-foot building, let's say? I don't believe that 7 feet or so is going to be even noticeable from the street level. And in fact, we did provide an exhibit as part of our last packet that depicted a streetscape view from down the street a little bit, what this building would look like in comparison to the adjacent buildings. And any height difference was barely noticeable from the street level. So the mere fact that it's 52 feet rather than 45, we don't think in and of itself creates an adverse impact. But what that height does, it allows us to provide a better bedroom mix that we think is advantageous for the city and advantageous for the neighborhood. By having that extra floor and going up to 52 feet, we can have 3-bedroom units and 2-bedroom units, which will allow more families to move in, young couples, empty nesters. They're not going to want the studios in the 1-bedrooms necessarily. If we are restricted to 4 stories, even with 15 units, it would be 1-bedrooms and studio units, because that's all that could fit on the property. That means more college students probably, or younger singles who are living there, which might not be the most desirable for the neighborhood. So we think there are benefits to the height, believe it or not, even though we understand there are some neighbors that are opposed to it. The next standard is that the variation is keeping with the intent of the zoning ordinance. We think it does, because this development will enhance the taxable value of the land. It complies with all the setbacks, lot coverage requirements, height requirements, parking requirements, and use restrictions for the R5 district. We comply with off-street parking, thereby minimizing congestion in the public streets, we believe. And we think this will be a significant aesthetic upgrade to the property. we described before, this is a two-flat, which is in poor shape. This new building looks nice. It's an improvement to the area, result in better taxes, and it's going to be heavily landscaped, and we showed you our landscaping plans. It's very green looking from the front and in the rear, which we think is a benefit to the neighborhood.
Can you remind us what the setback is from the street with regard to the landscaping?
How far back is the landscaping?
No, how far back is the building set from the street
Exactly
to allow
at-
for a green belt in front of it?
You might, if you're going to talk, you might have to stand up here.
Could you state your name and address for the record, please?
Adam Wilmot, Principal Architect with ZPDA Architects, 67 East Madison, Chicago.
Okay.
If we could go to, think about 3 more exhibits down on these, we'll get to the setback. One more. Sorry, 2 more. It's an older exhibit. It may be in the, it'll be in the newer packet.
But that shows a visual description.
It's the minimum setback for the zone, which escapes me at the moment, but I believe it's approximately 20 feet.
The typical requirement is 27 feet.
We'll be right at 27 feet. We
unless
are
the
at
block
the
average is
minimum.
different.
If I may proceed, the next standard is that the alleged hardship or practical difficulty is peculiar to this property. And here's where we think this property is unique. One, it's a 40-foot lot in an R5 district. That alone is not unique, as I know there are other properties with a kind of substandard lot widths. But this property is unique in that it is surrounded by these, this property lives in the shadows of 3 apartment buildings surrounding it on all sides with an L-track behind it. I don't think there are other properties in the R5 district that are infill developments that are such a narrow lot width surrounded by such large density buildings. So what we're looking to do here, because of this, what we think is a unique hardship, is really be in an equitable situation to our neighbors. Have some density that on a ratio basis equals the density of our neighbors, even though our dwelling units of 15 units is far less than the 36 or 50 dwelling units of the surrounding buildings. Next is, would the property owner suffer a particular hardship or practical difficulty as distinguished from a mere inconvenience if the zoning regulations are strictly followed? And the answer to that is yes. One, because the owner wants to be in an equitable situation with the surrounding buildings, and to build a small building next to these larger apartment buildings would really be out of character for the area. And what he's trying to do is meet the character of the area and enhance the character of the area. And while I know that economic hardship is not something that you typically consider as a factor, it is a practical difficulty in this case because the owner has submitted his pro forma, his financial data. He will earn about a 6% return after 10 years if he develops this property as currently shown. He's going to lose money with a lesser number of units. By providing 2 affordable housing units on site at a lower rental rate than market rent would provide, he's losing approximately $1,056,000 over the course of 30 years, which is the life of his mortgage. So there's some lost income by providing the affordable housing units. My client is happy to do that, but in return, he needs a slightly higher density in order to do that.
I'm sorry, I just want to, when questions come up, clarify them. Is the, under the inclusionary housing ordinance, is the requirement to maintain the affordable units for 30 years or is it for 10 years?
30 years because this is a covered development where affordable housing is a requirement.
Okay, thank you.
The next standard is that the variation is not based exclusively on a desire to extract additional income from the property or even if that is a desire, there's a corresponding public benefit that would justify the variance. And we actually believe that both are true. Our client studied the IHO, met with the housing administrator that administers the IHO, believes in the affordable housing policy. He's not providing a payment in lieu. He's providing them on site because that's what the city needs. Yes, it provides some bonuses, some development bonuses that help him make this project feasible, but he is providing them on site. So while he wants to make a reasonable return on this property, he also wants to provide a public benefit. Even if you determine that he is developing this primarily to get an economic benefit, there's still a great public benefit that goes along with this property. Not only is he enhancing the property from its current conditions in conformity with the surrounding development, heavily landscaped, meets the parking, et cetera, but as we pointed out extensively last time, he's providing the 2 on-site affordable housing units. So again, you, as a ZBA with the final decision here, need to weigh how important is it to carry on that important public policy of the city by encouraging on-site units and in return granting a variance for a little more density than what is allowed. Again, we could build this building footprint with a smaller number of units, let's say 5 units. It's still the same height and footprint of the building, it just has less units. So by adding more bedrooms to this, are we creating a problem for the city? Are we setting a dangerous precedent? Well, because we handle stormwater, parking, et cetera, we believe the answer to that is no. The last 2 standards I'll go through really quickly. Has this hardship been created by my client? The answer is no. That this is a pre-existing lot, 40 feet wide, and those surrounding apartment buildings with the high density, which were developed before the current zoning ordinance regulations, those were in place, those are pre-existing. So again, my client's just trying to get into parity with the surrounding development, with the development that kind of fits the neighborhood. And then lastly, are we requesting the least deviation possible for this property? And again, given the lot width and the surrounding development and some of the economic realities of the situation, we believe, yes, this is the least amount of a density variance we can request while complying with all the setbacks, while complying with the lot coverage, while complying with the height, while complying with the parking, et cetera. So that is it for the standards. I've addressed the height. I think I kind of addressed some of the, preemptively, maybe some of the objections of the neighbors who are a block or more away, who are single-family property owners, that this is going to somehow create an adverse impact on them a block or so away. And while I certainly, and we all do respect the opinions, glad they're here, thankful for their comments, I just don't believe that the fear of college students moving in is a legitimate reason to deny a reasonable zoning variance. This is a college town. This is an R5 district. There are existing apartment buildings. If college students do occupy some or all of this unit, my client can't not rent to college students if this is allowed to be built. The last thing I'll point out before I yield the floor is that the city has approved numerous other density variances for other properties throughout the city. Comparing density variances is comparing apples and oranges because every property is unique. Some of the properties had commercial components, some are in completely different areas, more commercial, et cetera. But I will point out one in particular, which was granted in 2016. It's the property at 824 to 828 Noyes Street. There, a 52-foot high development was approved in the R5/B1 zoning district, exact same height as proposed here. That did have first floor commercial. This project does not. And that project with providing affordable housing units on site was only allowed 12 dwelling units. However, a variance was granted to allow for 44 dwelling units. So by comparison, This development is seeking a much less severe of a variance as far as the number of dwelling units goes. We think there's a public benefit, and happy to answer any questions or yield to the public.
Just a second. Is there any questions for this gentleman from the board?
Yeah, I have a question. So the garages that are behind the building, have those already been purchased by the owner of the building?
Yes, they have been, and we presented a deed
Okay.
that shows.
Would you, those are known, just so you know, those are known around town as storage garages. And from the addresses of the various lessees, most of them are used as storage garages, not as parking garages. Would you make a commitment to evicting all of the storage users in those garages in advance of beginning to lease the spaces so that they are in fact available for automobiles?
Well, that would be a prerequisite, I would believe, to getting a building permit is to show that, yes, we have off-street parking available for the tenants. And we would agree to that as a condition. And in fact, my client testified at the last public hearing that those are all month-to-month leases. They're easily terminated. He has spoken to all of the lessees of those spaces that if this project gets approved, he will be giving them notice at some future date that they're out.
Okay.
Is that date like when their lease is up, or is it before that?
They're on a month. Every single lessee there is on
Is
a
on a
month-to-month lease. So he has to give them nothing more than 30 days notice, and they're out. And of course, he's going to give them more notice than when the units are ready for occupancy, because he needs to combine 2 of the units into a handicapped accessible unit. He also needs to provide 3 electric charging station in 3 of those off-street parking garages. So he'll need some time to get that done before the units are ready for occupancy.
Will there be a covenant that says that these are off-site parking spaces?
Yes,
There will be restricted covenants. Okay,
absolutely.
thank you. Any other questions from the board for this gentleman?
I have a quick question about the parking. Is the 15 or 16 perhaps existing parking spaces the extent of the parking building that was purchased?
Yes.
So there's another building directly north of there. I don't remember if it shares a party wall or not. That's a separate property.
That is separate. There are currently 16 parking spaces, and he's combining 2 of them to make 15. There'll be 15 total. Any technical questions? As you know, we have the architect here. We also have our project engineer here to answer any questions.
Okay, then I'm going to close the record, and we are going to move on to public hearing because it seems like we have a lot of people here tonight.
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, so everyone that is going to speak, I have the first person on my list is Kevin Miller. I don't know who that is, at 2121 Sheridan. I would like you to note that your comments will be reserved for 3 minutes because we have a lot of people here tonight. We'd like to move through our agenda. If someone says what you're going to say, just get up and say, I co-sign what my neighbor said. Please be succinct as possible so that everyone gets a chance and an opportunity to speak. Are you Mr. Miller? Please state your name and address for the record.
Yes, my name is Kevin Miller, and I live at 300 Main Street. I am the Chief Financial Officer for Garrett Evangelical Theological Seminary.
Okay.
We are located at 2121 Sheridan Road.
Okay.
We own the properties immediately north and south of this property, as well as the parking lot immediately across the street. So we surround this property. We are in support of this construction. I think the current single duplex house there does not fit the area there. I think the new apartment building will look very nice and add to the value of the area. As you know, all of our residents are students at Garrett Evangelical, so we are not worried about adding more students to the area. In fact, the reason we own apartment buildings is because we charge our students less rent because they couldn't afford to live and go attend school in Evanston because of the pricing. So we think that this will add to the beauty of the neighborhood, and we're in support of it.
Sir, I'd like to know, when did you see the plans? My fellow commissioner noted that we had something from you that said that you hadn't seen the plans.
When I wrote the letter, we had discussions, but they had not sent us the final plans. They had sent us soon after I had written that letter. So we reviewed them, but we talked about them in detail. When we talked about the original plans that were shown at the first session that wasn't complete, they had to make some changes, I think, because of requests. So once they made those final changes that you want, they sent us the final copy to see the plans. But the setbacks, the height, all of those things were already settled, and we were comfortable with all of the appearance of the building itself. So.
Okay, so I have some questions for you. Do you, have you engaged with the neighbors? So you're immediately south, but immediately south of you are quite a number of single-family homes. Have you had a chance to engage with the neighbors in those single-family homes with regard to their rather strong opposition to this project as it stands?
I have not. No, I have not.
And who manages your properties for you? You're the CFO, but who manages your properties who might take complaints from neighbors with regard to nuisance behavior or violations or parking violations or any of those things? Who is the property manager, and have you had a chance to speak with that person about how your properties are integrating with the neighbors to the south of the multi-unit buildings?
We manage our own property, so we don't have an outside organization that manages the property for us. I do have a director of buildings and grounds who is the immediate person who handles that, and he was at the meeting with the petitioners and also reviewed the plans with me and had the same discussions.
So he was at the meeting with the neighbors?
No, the meeting with the developer.
Oh, I see.
We were not invited to a meeting with the neighbors.
I understand. That was
so-
that was unfortunate.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Okay, so the next person on my list is Matt Dohenty.
Good
Good evening.
Thank you. Matt Doherty, 2122A Maple Avenue. And I received this card in the mail, so I must be a neighbor. I just want to make that clear.
Okay.
Thank you. And I'll come back to a little bit of the language that's used because I think it needs to be pointed out that earlier on there was language in the presentations were about neighborhood benefits, and it's now slid over to maybe public benefit, but certainly there won't be an adverse impact. And I think that's a very significant shift in the way we talk about this. In our neighborhood, it's not enough to just not have an adverse impact. It's nice if it improves the neighborhood. And I agree that replacing the building that's there with something a little more updated, contemporary, would be nice. But I don't think it's necessary to approve the waivers. There's a reason that we have those constraints, and as a citizen in that neighborhood, I would like to say, please vote against that. The presentation, again, is rather selective in the neighborhood they look at, because they look at just the high-density buildings around that immediate property. And there's a lot of folks in the neighborhood that have been there for a long time. And I would
Thank you, sir.
encourage you to respect that part of the neighborhood. Recognize it. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, the next person on my list is Jerry Foltz. Good evening.
Hi, I'm going to turn my clock on so I don't overgo my time.
Okay, thank you.
Jerry Foles, 2022 Maple. I've got 3 comments that I'd like to make. And the first one, in my job, I work with small business owners, many of whom invest in real estate. And if I brought an offer to any of them offering a 6% return over 30 years, is that what the word was? Nobody in their right mind who invests in real estate would do that. So I'm sure you've got numbers that show that, but I doubt very much that they are real numbers, that is what he expects. And if it's true, then what's the disconnect between this 6% return and all the other buildings that this owner has that are student housing, where I am sure he is making way, way, way more than 6%. It just is a huge disconnect for me that this person who engages in student housing that are not kept up, not well policed, are difficult for the neighborhood is now going to suddenly become an investor with a 6% return on that's just crazy. So I'll leave that. Number two, there's been a lot made about the parking and the cars, and that is a concern, even though I'm a block and a half away, and I'm not concerned about it. But what I don't think people are thinking about is who's going to live in these apartments. They're going to be students. So the car is not so much an issue as all the traffic that the students are going to generate on the sidewalk at night at 11 o'clock, drinking from the parties that they've been in and making noise. So I don't think parking is an issue, but I think the traffic from an extra 15 units of students living on that street in that location is going to be a huge issue for a neighborhood that already has a huge issue with students who are walking up and down the streets making noise. And I've lived in my spot for 35 years, and I accept it. What I find hard to believe is that this is in the benefit of the neighborhood. It just doesn't make sense to me that you would add 15 more units of student housing, which they've all indicated that's probably who the new tenants are going to be, to an errant neighborhood that already is overrun by students. And then the last thing I'll talk about is they surveyed the property owners that are surrounding the area, and none of those property owners have a problem with it. Well, they don't live there. None of those property areas live in that neighborhood. So why would they have a problem with another 15 units going in their neighborhood? They wouldn't. So you talk to the people that live in the neighborhood and ask whether there's a problem, I think you'll get a different answer. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Next person on my list is Tony Ray. Good evening.
Hi, I'm Tony Ray. I live at 1020 Grove in Evanston. I'm representing Joining Forces for Affordable Housing. We are pleased that the new incentives built into the inclusionary housing ordinance has given the potential for more affordable housing units. I also like the presentation that there'll be more 3-bedrooms, so there'll be more family-friendly aspect, and I like the green belt landscaping. Thank you.
Thank you. The next person I have on my list is Stuart Cleveland. Good evening.
Good evening. Stuart Cleveland. My wife and I live at 2145 Maple Avenue. Lived there since 1988, owner occupied. Two very quick points, and I made this one last time. I made it in a letter that I sent to you, but I want to make it again, and it's sort of been made. Nobody parks in those parking spaces now. Maybe one person does, I don't know. Lived there for 31 years, never see anybody coming and going. They're not used as housing for commuting cars. So what this is going to do is add 15 cars to a rather small dogleg alley. It's got blind spots coming onto Maple where moms and kids are coming. Cars are going to be coming out there. I've seen kids go by in the wakes and not notice. So this parking and congestion thing really is an issue. The other point I want to make, I live, as I said, at 2145 Maple Avenue, which is 4 properties south of the proposed current location. I'm a signatory to the neighbor petition. I'm also advised that Greg Hartline, my neighbor at 2149 Maple, is also a signatory. He's 2 houses south. He's directly on the other side of the south building they've been talking about. For this gentleman to say, neighbors a block or more away, come on, that's baloney and it's insulting. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Next person on my list is Mark Bean.
Good evening. My name is Mark Bean. My wife Susan and I live at 2128 Maple, just across the street and down a bit. I've written a letter stating my points, which I think has been distributed to the board. So I won't go through all those, but I think that it's pretty clear that this proposal doesn't satisfy any of the requirements, much less all of the requirements for granting a zoning variance. I want to respond to some of the things that were said earlier in presentations by the developer. First, he completely ignores the impact his project will have on our neighborhood. The zoning ordinance does not require you only to pay attention to the immediately next door properties. Your scope is wider than that. The developer has had, as far as I know, no communication whatsoever with the homeowners and other folks who live in other than the buildings immediately surrounding him that you've heard from today. Mr. Wilmot has said that in this project, they're only looking for parity with the surrounding buildings, but that in fact is not what they're asking for. They're asking to be permitted to build higher than the surrounding buildings. And it's not a height to which they're entitled, because their entitlement on a 40-foot lot is only to build a 1 or 2 family home. And so there is no 50-foot entitlement that the developers got. The reference to adding 2 and 3 bedroom homes so that families will move into that building is, I think, illusory and hard to take seriously if you look at what's happened to other similar buildings that have been built recently, like the building on Noy Street that's been referred to, or the E2 building down at the corner of Emerson and Maple. They are not family properties. They are all student properties. Speaking for my wife and I think for the neighbors, we support affordable housing. We think that that having inclusionary housing units in here in this project is a good idea. The inclusionary housing ordinance provides that if they can build a multifamily building, the number of permitted units would be 11. There's no reason to give him a variance to build more than that. And with respect to the adjoining buildings and the testimony of the CFO of Garrett, I will say that our neighborhood has had extensive problems with student behavior in our neighborhood, problems that the city and the school and the landlords have so far been unable to meaningfully respond to or reduce. But I don't believe we've had any trouble with students from Garrett Theological Seminary.
Thank you, sir. Next person on my list is David Farrer.
Thank you. David Fettner.
Thank you.
And I'm a builder working with the developer. My address is 852 Ridge Road in Highland Park. And I want to thank you for being here. I'm actually on the Highland Park Zoning Board, so I understand the commitment coming in night after night. Like I said, I'm the principal at Fettner Construction. I have over 20 years experience. And, we've been involved with the developer and with this project for a little bit of time now. We reviewed different revisions, different modifications of the plan. And in my opinion, this is the best version of the plan. It is by far the best possible version, both for aesthetics and for public benefit. We build up and down the North Shore from Lake Bluff up to Chicago. And not a lot of developers put inclusionary housing into their projects, even when they can. And when they do, they'll pay into a fund or they'll build them off-site. So when you have a project like this where the developer's putting the affordable housing into the project itself, I think that's a great benefit to the public. Aside from that, there's the construction costs. When you go into a project and the smaller scale it is, the higher price per square foot, the construction cost rises. The larger the project, the lower the construction cost, and makes it more economically feasible. So just wanted to see if there's any questions and give my opinion on the project, just as a builder, 20 years experience, who's reviewed different versions of the project.
So what would make this aesthetically unpleasing if it were, say, an 11-unit building or, perhaps at 45 feet like or 40 feet like the surrounding buildings?
Mm-hmm.
What would make it aesthetically unpleasing? I know that there's the contention that economically it's not feasible at that density. I did review the numbers that were submitted in that regard, and I think that there's plenty of room. Of course, that it did state that there are a lot of variables in those numbers, but I didn't see that as being written in stone. So, I mean, if you can speak to that, some modification, because we do have also, I know that you said you join Alderman Robin Rue Simmons in her support of this project, but she wrote in the letter that she submitted that she's in support of this project with 2 or 3 fewer units. So wondering if we can all get to that place where we recognize that this property needs to be upgraded. There's no question. And the neighbors who are in the single-family homes to the south may need to understand that there's going to have to be some compromise. But this is really taking it to the hilt with the, inclusionary housing ordinance, giving 4 additional units to bring it to 11. Is that correct, Melissa? Or is it 11 or 9?
9 are permitted by right.
Okay, so 9, to jump that much higher, I think it seems as though it is pushing the envelope in every regard. So I'm wondering if you can speak to how this might be still aesthetically pleasing with a little bit less density.
Well, I think regardless of what goes up, it's going to be an improvement based on what's there, what's existing right now. But when we look at it, we look at scale, we look at proportion. And I think the proportion of the building being taller and higher as it relates to other buildings in the area, as it relates to other buildings that can be built in the area in the future. I think if you look ahead a few years, you look to have a 4 or 5 story building, and there's other 4 or 5 story buildings around it. If you only have a 2 or 3 story unit building, you come down the street, the streetscape, the aesthetics is going to be off.
But this is 5 stories.
Correct. Right. That's the proposal.
And all of the buildings around it are 3.5 stories?
I think for now they are, correct. But the zoning allows for I believe up to a 5 story building, maybe even taller in the area. So when looking at the project as a whole, again, we've looked at different versions. We've looked at shorter, taller.
But it is a question of both the height and the density. And I think the density is really what the neighbors are talking about. And so, once again, I'm trying to find a way to wrap Alderman Simmons's responses and the neighbors' responses into a project that can still get through.
I understand. And I'm just speaking to the existing project that's before us now. So, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we have 6 more people, so let's try to stay to our 3 minutes. The next person is Tim Rezeloff. Is he here? Yes.
Good evening.
Good
I'm
evening.
Tim Verswolf, and I live at 2201 Ridge. I've been living there since 1995. I've seen the property throughout my years with my kids and everything. I pass by there each day, going to D&D and all this business district that we have at North Street. The development project that the Mister has, the developer, it's a very good project, and it will bring a better appeal to the street itself, just because there's north and south, same buildings. 7 feet high, it's not going to make any big difference. Also, there was some mentioning about the back garages. I've been going through those back garages a lot of time with my kids. Nobody walks through those. It's an alley that only a garbage truck goes. There's no kids walking around there. There's no people. There's nothing else. There's just garbage trucks that pick up the garbage. So I think that's an issue with the other people. The other thing that I wanted to say is we live in Evanston, so we have to adjust to the students from Northwestern being around us. So I fully give support to the developer. Thank you.
Next person I have is Diane Lithy that lives at 2017 Maple. Yes.
There's some things to say.
Good evening.
Hi. I've lived there.
Your name and address?
Diane Lickety,
Yes.
2017 Maple. I've lived there for over 40 years. I have a fair amount of questions for what was brought up. Supporters from Ridge Avenue, they're in another street. It's a commercial street. They don't have houses. They have big apartments, not houses. Why would they care? Was there a meeting with neighbors? Not that I know of. We weren't asked. The owners won't use the garages. I have a 2-car garage. I don't use it. I park on the street, and I think they will too. And there's not enough parking for all those cars. It'll meet and enhance the character of the area. I don't think so. Families won't move into it. Students will. I think we all know that. 3 bedrooms mean 3 students at least in those places. I realize the city needs more income, but we're losing our family neighborhood. Noise is also not in a neighborhood. It's commercial. Our street, Maple, is mostly houses. We voted down buildings higher than 3 stories, I thought, years ago. When they asked us what we wanted in our neighborhood, we said we didn't want high buildings. We wanted 1 or 2 story buildings, but people, developers want it higher. We want our family neighborhood. We don't want to give it up to a 5-story building. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, the next person on here, Ms. Evans, did you want to speak? That's okay, Ms. Evans. Name and address. Yes.
Jane Evans, 813 Gaffield. I just think it's, you've gotten my letter. I've sent you a letter. I spoke last time. I don't want to take up a lot of your time, but I just want to reiterate that we are a very delicate mix of single-family homes, 2 and 3 flats and apartment buildings. And we have larger apartment buildings on our perimeter. And I'm talking about the R4A district, zoning district that starts right next to the building that is south of the proposed, so the Garrett building. We have handled we've had disruptive students in our neighborhood for the 30 years that I've lived in my home. But we've worked really hard. The single family homeowners, the students, and Northwestern University to try to make it a very good and livable neighborhood. So here's the concern. It's not the students. The concern is the density. I'm here not because I think that there is anything redeeming about the property that was purchased as it is now. We're talking about the variation or the variance, and that is the concern that at least I have. It's not about an apartment building going on that property. It's not about whether or not we support it or don't support it. I personally have no problem with an apartment building being on that property. I do have a problem if the height is not consistent with the vintage buildings that are around it. And I also have a major concern when a builder comes up and says, well, that's the height they are now, because that's my neighborhood. And I don't want to have to think about all the houses in the all the apartment buildings in the R4A district becoming taller and taller and taller. Because what I want to do is keep my neighborhood in the delicate mix that it is. And I do believe that I find it very disingenuous that the current property owner has come before the zoning board to say that unless he builds a 5-story, 15-plus building, he cannot make it work financially. Surely he thought of this before he made the purchase of this property and all the garages behind it. And surely he knew that affordable housing requirements are now part of new residential buildings. And there isn't a person in my neighborhood that is not supportive of affordable housing. But when you're putting 2 affordable housing units in order for you to get a variance, and one of them is a studio apartment, I just have to call question. And the only other thing I want to say is that this particular gentleman and his wife own at least 7 properties between Noyes Street and Simpson. That is a very short 2-block area. All of them have students in them. All of them, or most of them to my knowledge, have apartment or have bedrooms that have been added so that they can stuff people into those buildings. Students can't even complain about it because they're afraid they're going to lose their homes or not be able to stay in their homes if it becomes clear that there's more than 3 unrelated. So the students aren't the problem. Safety is important and density is important. And I'm not sure that I see this particular landlord or actually developer being honest about what he really wants to do with these properties. We've had absentee landlords in our neighborhood for years, and now it appears that developers are trying to come in as well. And that's a concern of us. We're trying to keep a delicate mix. Thanks.
Thank you. The next person is Barbara Blades. Ma'am, step to the microphone so we could hear you, please. That's okay.
I just have, Barbara,
Your name and address.
2111 Maple.
Thank you.
I just have the copies that you got in email. Did you get your email copies?
Yes, they have everything that you sent me.
Yeah. So there are almost 50 signatures here against project.
Thank you, ma'am. I think we already have that in our packet.
Do you want me to give the original?
Thank you. That'll be our Exhibit 2 for today. Okay, the next person on my list is Carney Brown.
Hello.
Good evening.
Hi. My name is Carrie Brown, and my parents purchased a house at 2018 Maple in 1988, and I have lived there off and on throughout my life. And I wanted to show my support for the developer because I feel like a lot of my neighbors on Maple, so I'm a block and a half south of the building, or the proposed building. And I just wanted to show my support because a lot of my neighbors are what seems to be, they kind of forgot that they moved into an area where there are Northwestern students. It is a mixed neighborhood. There are business districts around it. There are apartment buildings. There are single-family homes. And I just want to say that he is a well-respected professional. And I know that because of what he's done for the Maple Foster District, which is a business district that's up and coming. He has helped small business owners open their businesses in the buildings on the corner. And I have been a witness to this, and I have seen major positive changes. So I just wanted to say that. And I support and trust his integrity, and especially for this project. So thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
The last person on my list is Jeffrey Gates. 141 Asbury. Jeffrey Gates, going once, going twice. Jeffrey Gates. Okay, I'm going to determine that he probably went on home, and I am going to ask the petitioner to come up and sum up the case and maybe answer some of these questions. Any one of your team, whoever you pick. Please. Oh, okay, sir, I didn't get you on this list. but-
Sorry, I didn't put my name on the list.
That's okay. Name and address for the record.
Mark Sirica, 837 Lincoln.
Thank you.
So I'm about 2 blocks north of the development. A couple of relevant points I'd like to bring up, and I heard here issues with the parking or whatever. Well, I'm a general contractor and a developer, but I rent one of the garages from the owner, and it's true, virtually every one of those garages is a storage for a landscaper, for contractors, or whatever. And I can say that anytime I go there, there's usually 2 or 3 other garage tenants loading and unloading and whatever. And so turning those garages from storage for small businesses into parking for cars, I think is a plus for the neighborhood. Okay. I do not live on Maple, but again, I'm 2 blocks north of there. I think what is being proposed here is an excellent addition to the neighborhood. My street has some multifamily housing on it that students live in. I have lived at my house for over 25 years. Do not have any significant complaints about the students or whatever. And I think to provide a higher standard of housing for the students is just going to benefit the neighborhood. Obviously, it's going to help the tax base in Evanston. Being a significant taxpayer, I can speak to that. So I come here just being in support of this project.
Thank you, sir. Anybody from the petitioner's team that wants to sum up, answer some of these questions, please approach. Give your name again, please.
So good evening. I'm Paul Harb. I'm at 107 Green Bay Road in Wilmette, and I'm the developer. So I took some notes, and I tried to make it in 3 minutes. And 2 of them are shocking to me. They came from, and I used to be very good with names. I'm sorry, I do not remember. We have someone who lives on Gaffold, and the gentleman who came to speak about the revenue and the real estate and all this investment. Mrs. Barbara Blades came at Dapper. They are saying that I do own all these properties, and I made it publicly that I own one property that is 2141 Maple beside this development, and this, I think we are under oath today. So I recommended Mrs. Barbara Blades to go onto the commissioner website and to check who owns which property before coming to a public hearing. I do say the same to you, Mr., because I do not remember what you said, but I think you said that I do own probably 100 units or something like this.
I'm sorry, I didn't get how many units you actually do own. One unit?
2 flat.
Or one building?
Address. No, 2 units. One building, 2 units.
One building that has 2 units in it.
Nothing else. So I do not know what they are talking about. It's shocking to me. And then talking about the Gaffold, and we just received.
Do you manage any other properties in the neighborhood?
Indirectly, barely.
Pardon me?
Indirectly, not heavily. So these are owned by professional property management company, and they have their crews and everything. So
Well, I'm trying to understand. I'm sorry. I'm just trying to understand what I'm hearing as a discrepancy. So Alderman Simmons seems to feel as though you have been involved for quite some time in the neighborhood.
Yes.
And people who live in the neighborhood seem to feel that you and your wife have been involved in the neighborhood in property ownership or management for some time. Do you represent any other ownership
As I
groups?
said, I'm a realtor. I'm a commercial and residential real estate agent. I have brought, Mrs. Carrie Brown said that I have brought many businesses to the neighborhood.
So you're a leasing agent in the neighborhood, or you are a property manager? I'm just trying to reconcile this.
I'm a realtor. I'm a property manager for Wilmette Real Estate. I'm a realtor
Wilmette
too.
Real Estate, of course. Okay.
So that's one thing. And then I have the feeling that you have been steered in a way where, these two affordable units, I'm obliged to give them anyway, which is I am not. I am obliged to give one unit and pay a fee in lieu for the other unit. Okay? Since the beginning, Mr. Mark Beam or Mr. Stuart Cleveland have said that last time. It's not true. It's false. I am obliged only to giving you one unit. Not only I'm giving two.
Well, but then the number of bonus units that you would get would be
What I'm trying to
diminished.
say is at the level of density that I'm asking,
Mhm.
I can come and say this is one unit and this is a fee in lieu. The Sherman development right now, 300 units, they paid a fee in lieu for 15 units and they just did not give more affordable units. So that's the other point. I guess to the comment about the garages, I think I did provide to Mrs. Klotz a parking lease. And these are parkings. I advertise for parking. They pay me $100 a month. They barely pay the mortgage. So when I heard the comment last time, I contacted the public storage facility, and for 50 square feet, they charge $100. I mean, if I charge the same, I'm a public storage, right? They said that, I would be causing all these 16 people to move out right away because I'm storage, right? I'm not. I have parking leases. I advertise for parking. Speaking about students and non-students, today I was really, I'm confused. I mean, Mrs. Barbara Blade said about things about students, ghetto, warehousing students, shoving ill people. And today we heard that the concern is not the students. I mean, I think my target is not students, okay? I don't think this is a building designed to be a student building, right? It has 5 balconies. Students do not care about that. It's not a building designed for, we can put a box and an innovation with all windows, and the students would move into it. They don't care. So we're really design-wise targeting. I think my attorney addressed this point, and. I told Alderman Simmons that I'm offering a 3-bedroom. I think families move to a 3-bedroom apartment. Yes, we were offering smaller because there is a need for a studio, and this has been said by Mrs. Sarah Flax too. And I do agree that one block south on Maple is single-family homes too. We look also one block further south. It's again commercial, it's businesses, it's a transit-oriented development area. So that's the whole thing. That's the whole thing about it being, a way to facilitate for families to live in, to commute next to the Noise metro station. So again, I own one. Let's make it clear. I own one building, one address, 2 units, and I think that a 6% to 8%, depending on, what mortgage I get, what interest rate. Right now, it's showing 6.8. As you mentioned it beautifully, there are a lot of variables. So I don't know 2 years from now if there is a recession or not recession. I don't know what I'm gonna get. And I have 2 units, so I am more than happy with helping the neighborhood, with owning an 8% return. It's a great return. There's no problem. And last thing is, Alderman Simmons sent you a letter, right? I think she spoke about me, about the integrity, about everything. So I have no idea what the gentleman said about. Mrs.
Well, I was simply commenting on the fact that Alderman Simmons has said that she supports this project once it has been reduced by 2 or 3 units.
I understand that, but I'm sorry to interrupt. Go ahead.
So that's the only point I was
Yeah, but-
making. And
but-
yes, otherwise she does commend you for
Paragraph after,
for
yes.
your
It's
influence
not
in the
what we
neighborhood.
heard
I agree
today.
with that.
So between what we heard today about how bad I am, how many hundreds of properties I own, and how the 2 affordable units are not, I could have paid one in fee in lieu, I think there's a discrepancy. So I'm happy you give me a chance to address all this. Thank you.
So, sir, I have a question for you before you leave, Mr. Hart. So that the alderman and the community is asking you to redo the density, have you considered doing that?
I can consider it. doing
You
it.
can consider it.
Mhm.
So then you would resubmit the proposal?
I have to consult with my attorney, with Mrs. Klotz, and I do not know what are the legal steps after that.
So as it is right now, you can proceed, the board can vote. I'm taking a wild guess here. I don't think it will go your way.
Okay.
Your alternative is that you can request to have the case continued tonight without a vote so that you can revise the proposal, and then you would come back to whatever next zoning board hearing that we would decide
I
tonight.
can do that.
You'd prefer to do that? Approximately how long do you need to get plans revised, let staff look at them, and see what the
I think
variations are
by
at
the
that
next
point?
meeting, ZBA meeting, if.
That would be August 27th, so staff would need things from you around August 15th.
And today we're July 16th. I think that's
Mhm.
feasible unless we'll get back to you within this week.
If you
I think
did,
it's feasible for us.
Okay, if you want to do that, then you need to request a continuance to revise the plans so that they don't vote right now. If they vote, then the case is done and you have to start over from step one.
I will request that.
Are you requesting a continuance to August 27th, sir?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
So for everyone in the audience, there will not be a new mailed notice for this. The proposal has to be smaller than what is there now. There cannot be any new variations or an increase to the variations proposed. So the applicant will come back at that date. We will hear what the changes are, and then if anyone has any new comments, I would ask please try to keep them to the new comments because we do have other cases that we need to get to both tonight and at the next meeting. But it sounds like we will see you August 27th.
Thank you, yes.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, everybody.
I would move that we accept a continuance on this case to August 27th, is it?
I second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay. It's continued to August 27th. Thanks to everybody for your participation.
Melissa? Could I just ask a clarifying question on the IHO? The affordable units that are supplied have to be of a similar standard and delivery as the market rate units, correct?
Correct.
Do they have to be a similar, a comparable size?
Within reason, but not exact, yes. So
I suggested then that that be considered, because that doesn't seem to be how it's manifesting itself now.
as it was proposed, our housing staff was comfortable with it because they were offering more than the minimum required number of on-site units. So if the revised proposal only includes the minimum affordable units, which would be one, then it may need to be a different unit size. I'll confer with them and see.
Okay.
Thank you. I'm going to ask everybody, if you're filing out, to please file out quietly. We do have a meeting to continue. Thank you. The next case is 2510 Green Bay Road. Is the petitioner in the room? Please approach. Melissa, could you read this into the record? Thank you.
Eyes are going.
Still haven't done it.
Baines Sirjevic.
Bana Srđević.
Thank you. Potential lessee applies for a special use permit for a commercial indoor recreation facility, Lock Chicago, in the B1A Business District and OCSC Central Street Overlay District, zoning code sections 6953 and 615.14.7. The Zoning Board of Appeals makes a recommendation to City Council, the determining body for this case. Documents included as part of the record include special use application submitted June 11th, 2019, business summary, fire sprinkler and egress email, plat of survey, site plan, letter of opposition, image of property, aerial view of property, zoning map of property, and Dapper meeting minutes excerpt of July 3rd, 2019.
Thank you very much and good evening.
Good evening.
My name is Bana Srđević, one of the owners along with Brian Lee and Alex Wilson for Lock Chicago Escape Room Games. Currently we're at 820 Davis Street. I'd like to take a second to explain what an escape room is. An escape room is a recreational center where people can come in, usually families or corporate events, and they will spend up to an hour within one of our rooms. A room consists of puzzles and games, nothing really physically oriented. It's family friendly, handicap accessible, and not active or not invasive or interrupting in any way. We are requesting for a zoning variance to 2510 Green Bay Road. The location 2510 Green Bay Road, we will be taking a small portion of the current square footage that is there, and we'll be building our business, moving our current existing rooms and existing business as it stands at 810 to 2510. I know some of the concerns that have come up for our current business and moving to 2510 have involved noise and parking. I'd like to address those. For parking, there are currently 10 parking spots allocated to 2510 Green Bay Road. There's been a concern that due to the various businesses there, including our businesses, employees, and our customers who will be coming through, that there may not be enough parking spaces. Our employees at peak hours, there are 3 on staff. That's on Saturdays. It is 1 on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and 2 on Thursdays and Fridays. None of them commute to work via car. It's all via bicycle, L train, or buses. Likewise, our hours are separate from standard business hours. We operate on Monday through Friday from 5 p.m. to 10 p.m. And then on weekends, we operate from 10 a.m. to 10 p.m. So we will not be coinciding with many of the businesses that will be operating out of 2510 as well as in addition to us. Customers that come through, at most we have about, on weekdays we have on average 10 there at any time. At peak we can have about 20 people there, not including the 1 or 2 employees that are there as well. Most of them, whether they come from the city, they come by train. Some do come by car, but they'll usually come in groups or carpools. Very rarely will we have someone who comes, where each person comes in individually. We've never had an issue with parking at our current location, and I don't believe that it'll be the case at this one as well. In terms of the noise, the question about noise, specifically in the alley, as I said, our business is very quiet. We have no loud music. We have no running around. We have no yelling, shouting, no crazy physical activity. All of our business is contained to the front of the shop. Our current layout is located at the northeast section of the building, which is towards the front entrance. The alley will only ever be used as a secondary exit route in case it's necessary. Likewise, we would not be using the alley for any kind of trucks, any kind of shipping. We have no inventory of any kind. We have nothing that comes and goes. We're a very subtle business, and we would be causing very, very little, if any, commotion in that alley. Likewise, in the front, if let's say we have all of our customers there at one point at peak capacity, we will only ever have 20 to 30 there, and they will have exactly 1 hour to be there. There's no sticking around. They don't hang out afterwards. They usually go try to find some food in Evanston or something else to do in the area. So I don't foresee any issues with people sticking around and causing any undue noise after they've completed our games and our escape rooms. In terms of any kind of impact that we will have on the existing building as it stands, we don't have any kind of specific requirements for our internal build-out other than the size of our rooms. So we are fully ready to design anything that'll be compliant with anything required by fire or safety standards. In terms of any impact to the exterior of the building, we will have a portion of signage that'll be on there. We are currently discussing what that signage will be, but it'll be anything that is within reason and within any kind of restrictions that are created for that building. As I said, we're a very, very unobtrusive business. You know, most of our customers who come in are young professionals in the mid to late 20s, or families for birthday parties, get-togethers, or corporate outings. And I don't believe that they will be causing any kind of undue disturbance to the area.
Mr. Serbovich, I am not familiar with this type of business. What's the average age of people that would go to a lock room?
Sure. So our three main groups are corporate outings. So anybody from any of the businesses around Evanston or Chicago, they were one of our most frequent customers. For regular, no necessary pattern kind of customer, it's about the mid-20s range, about 25. We do have some Northwestern students who come as well. They make up about 15% of our current employee base. And then we also have birthday parties and get-togethers for families.
So this is like children's birthday parties?
At minimum, around ages 12, 13, 14, yes.
Okay, so at that point, what would you do about parking?
For parking, as I said, that's during off hours. Usually the businesses that are there, most of our birthday parties happen on weekends. So any of the other businesses that are currently there would not be using the parking space. As I said, our employees don't use them as well. There are 10 parking spaces there. And for birthday parties, we do have limits to the rooms. The rooms can't contain unlimited amounts of people. Each room at most can contain 10 people. So there are limits to the size of those. And we have so far not had any issues with parents coming in. We've never had a group bigger than maybe the full 25, 30 people that we can have at once coming through.
So at that point, you'd have like food and they'd be hanging out for the party?
No, we don't. We don't allow food or drinks at the location. Location is strictly people come 15 minutes before the escape room for, explaining them how the escape room works, making sure the group gets there. They have exactly 1 hour or a little bit less if they succeed earlier within the room. And then they have another 15 minutes for photos and those kinds of things. And then they'll leave and they'll usually go to some other part of Evanston or to somebody's house for pizza, cake, those kinds of things.
Do you know what other businesses plan to be in this building with you?
Currently, I don't know what other businesses.
You have no idea? You haven't heard from the owner?
I don't know if Chuck, if you want to speak to that.
You can, thank you. And you're only going to take up like the front half of the building, or are you in the back half?
So we'll be in the front. It'll be about the front quarter.
The front quarter of the building. Thank you. Those are my questions. Anybody else?
You had addressed the alley. Do you envisage having any public access from the alley side?
All both lobbies for the building, as far as I'm aware, it'll be a shared lobby space through the front. We do not plan to encourage or in any way advertise that the back is an entrance to our building. It'll be used, as I said, as a employee exit if necessary, or an emergency exit if necessary. All business will be told to come in through the front off the street entrance.
And I think this is kind of touching on, I think, what Ms. Cullen was getting at as well. When I hear kids' birthday parties, I think of drop-offs. Do you have the space in your front parking area to allow for parents or guardians to drop off children?
So in terms of drop-off, so for our birthday parties, we don't allow children to be unsupervised. So parents will usually stick around with the children, because the rooms, where they're delicate, we build everything by hand. It's constructed, so we require that parents stay with the children. Okay. Usually, if there's any kind of drop-off or consolidation of that kind, it happens before the fact, and then whoever's required to stay with the kids will remain at the escape room.
So my understanding from my daughter-in-law, who was in town from San Francisco, and she said, escape rooms in Evanston, is that it's really more of a brain game.
Yes.
It's like a puzzle within a puzzle, and so it is, I think, inherently quiet. And I would say that it's not the type of business that generally is going to attract rowdies. So I don't think that noise should be a concern.
Thank you.
Looking at your sketch, and I'm asking not a zoning question, but just curious. The rooms that are in the middle, they seem to be open to one another, but not to the outside. Is that correct? I don't see doors.
So yeah, so the layout is in flux. That is just an example of the amount of space that we would be able to take, or if we would decide to have the rooms be multi-room escape rooms. Sometimes escape rooms, you go into one and it opens up into additional rooms as part of the puzzle.
Okay.
All rooms will be able to be accessed with some flow to the hallway, to the shared hallway of the space.
And your schedule, I noticed that it is always on top of the hour it starts. Is that correct, or you have overlapping hours?
So we have on weekdays, we have overlapping hours on the half hour. And then on weekdays, we run every 2 hours is one of our rooms. Mondays through Wednesdays, we have 2 rooms running, so we only have a little bit of overlap there. Thursdays, Fridays, we have 3 rooms running. And on Saturdays, we have hour and a half. So we have all 3 rooms overlapping for 30 minutes or so.
So does it mean that you will need some waiting space?
Waiting space, no. So our rooms are all independent of one another. We have the shared lobby that is part of the building where we will be able to have people get together while the group gathers. But as I said, they're only there for 15 minutes beforehand. It's a very, very strict schedule because we have rooms coming and going, so we try to enforce people to stay at that time. And then the rooms we have enough employees on staff to be able to move people from room to room without having to wait for another room to exit. So there won't be any kind of waiting space needed. Just the communal lobby is more than big enough.
Okay, thank you.
Did I read also that you are leaving the ceilings open to the ceiling above so that you would avail yourself of the sprinkler system that's already in place?
Yes, that's correct. So we will not be making any changes to the ceilings. Our rooms will be open to the roof of the building or to the rafters of the building, and so we will not be obstructing any of the current fire ordinances that are in place.
And you will be using the existing rooftop units for heating, venting, and air conditioning?
Yes, we'll be using those as well.
Thank you.
So my question goes back to this business of Lock Chicago. So on Davis, you're doing a lucrative business. It's very busy.
Yes.
Is this an expansion for you?
No, we are moving that business to 2510.
And you have 5 rooms on Davis, and
We have 3 rooms, so it'll be a movement of the exact same business that we have. So we have 3 rooms currently at Davis, and we'll be moving those exact same 3 rooms over to.
so it's not 5, it's 3.
No, so it's 3 escape rooms, and then there's a storage room, and then a game master's room. So the game masters have to monitor things via sound and camera footage, so that's 1 room for them, 1 room for storage, and then 3 rooms for the escape rooms.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Okay, let's open up for public comment. Thank you, sir. Anybody want to speak to this project? Like what else? Please approach the mic and give us your name and address for the record.
Good evening. My name is Ira Smith. I reside at 1835 Lincoln Street. I own that 2-flat building, and I also live there. We are the property that is the absolute closest to 2510 Green Bay Road, off of the alley. Okay. So I just wanted to say that I think we heard, but this sounds like a pretty good idea, right? As compared to some things that were considered a few months ago for that property, this seems like a pretty good use of that space. I've actually never met any of these folks, so I'm learning about it for the first time tonight. I appreciate the opportunity to have a forum like this to talk things out. So we're just really worried about the parking situation. And I know that they're not worried about it, but I know that building, and I know that there are 10 spaces there. We don't know who the other tenants may be that are going into that building. I haven't heard how many spaces have been reserved for their use, which is something that they might want to speak to. It doesn't sound like there's going to be 150 people showing up like we were worried might have happened with some other uses for that space, so it's probably not that big of a deal. I just hope that they have a plan for what are they going to do when a dozen parents show up in their own cars, because there is no alternative in that area. There's a lot of restricted parking, so they're going to have to have a plan for it. But otherwise, as their closest neighbor, closest residential neighbor, I would say that this sounds like a reasonable use for that space, and I hope that the fine points can come together and that it makes sense to the city.
Thank you. Would the owner like to step up and talk about what else is going on in the building and the parking overflow?
Certainly. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you. Your name and
My name
address,
is Charles
please.
Happ, HAPP. I have been I've worked in Evanston and have owned real estate in Evanston for over 45 years, as Muffy well knows. I've got a number of commercial properties in and around Evanston, including all three of the major business districts. Bonnie has.
What was your address, sir?
Pardon me?
Your address. For the record.
For the record, the other addresses?
Your address.
My address is 657 Ash Street in Winnetka.
Thank you.
I've owned businesses at buildings at Main and Chicago, on Davis Street, at Green Bay and Central, and now let it be known that while I don't own 2510 tonight, I do expect to close before the end of July. The parking has been an issue. When you are in business in Evanston, you've got two issues. You have water and you've got parking. And so I've been able to satisfy all the parking requirements in all the buildings that I've owned and managed over the past 45 years. Bonnie has already mentioned that most of their business is off hours. I've spent considerable amount of time with buildings that I've owned on Central Street and near Green Bay and Central. I believe that there's going to be sufficient enough parking at the building as well as in the neighborhood, particularly on the other side of the railroad tracks at evening and weekends, if indeed it would be needed. I don't foresee 12 parents dropping off their kids all at the same time for a party, and I don't want to minimize it, but Bonnie has a very broad base selection of clientele, and to dwell on 12 parents dropping off their 10-year-olds, I think would be doing a disservice to the business. So we have made arrangements with neighbors. Scott Rogers, I've spoken with about parking off hours as well, but there is ample parking on the other side of Green Bay Road by the train tracks for any evening or weekend traffic. If you have the concern, most of the other businesses that are going to be in there are local, single-family owned businesses. Mr. Cawley is well aware of my work with the Technology Innovation Center, which is a 36-year-old nonprofit small business incubator, which I operate out of. This will be the third building for that. We have at the peak reached 42 high-tech startup companies. Most of them are single or double office users for services, software development, maybe some product development, but no food, no beverage, no drink, no abuse. Most of the people actually that we know that will be coming into 2510 so far are either local single office business owners who will be walking, riding the bike, but also know the sensitivity to the neighborhood and are well aware of parking issues in the city of Evanston.
So Chuck, can I ask you, will this actually be another incubator space?
We hope so, yes. I've spoken with a number of client companies in and around the area, and we hope to attract more startup companies. You're well aware of my work in Evanston with economic development. Right. Bonnie also was maybe too modest to mention the fact that at 820 Davis Street, not only do corporate clients come in for team building efforts and families come in, but they come into town and they spend money in restaurants downtown Evanston and may be doing some shopping before or afterwards. So there is an economic development to the businesses that Bonnie and Brian are promoting here, and that's sort of what I've been doing for a number of years as I was chairman of the Small Business Incubator for over 10 years.
So this has actually nothing to do with the business that's before us today as an applicant. But just out of curiosity, I mean, if it's going to be an incubator space, will you be looking for tax considerations?
Tax considerations?
Yeah. Like you had at the incubator at 820.
No.
Good.
Had you thought about making an agreement with like the FedEx Kinko's parking lot for additional parking or anything like
It
that?
remains a possibility as well, yes.
And
I don't
you thought-
believe I'm going to need it, but it remains a possibility.
Just in case you need it.
Sure, yes.
So the neighborhood won't be miserable.
No, it wouldn't.
Okay, thank you.
They won't even know it. I'm not prepared with a stack of, or a list of good neighbors, but I've run a fairly successful business in Evanston for now 45 years. I remain available in case other people have some questions that would like to be addressed, but thanks for the opportunity.
I just have one, to stay on the parking for just one more question. If I understand the brief correctly, you have a 15-minute before your scheduled time period and a 15-minute roughly after your scheduled time period, but then the appointments are stacked. I think you've given some variations on the hour, every hour and a half, whatever it may be. If you do start to get feedback from customers or from neighbors that the parking is an issue, because you are, if there's 20 people in a room at a time, there is going to be a period where people are coming and people are going. So that's going to be a stress on the parking. So if that does start to become an issue, would you take another look at your available scheduling?
Yeah, absolutely. And my name is Brian Lee. I'm one of the other owners as well. And yeah, absolutely. So on our website, we list out very clearly, hey, this is the best way to get to us. We always recommend, Metro, a lot of the other public transportation as well, even to 820, just to limit the amount of cars kind of coming through. But yeah, absolutely. We actually change our schedules pretty frequently to what suits our employees the best, to what suits the customer feedback, to what suits other building tenants. So we can change it essentially on a dime. We're certainly happy to oblige that as well.
To ease this, can you put on your website the requirement when you have the schedule hourly? Can you put something like, I'm coming with my car or I'm coming with the CTA, so that you can partially control who is coming with the car?
So we actually have like kind of a questionnaire, like how did you find out about us? One of the questionnaires as well is similar to transportation. So that's where Bonnie, we got our facts on a lot of people taking the Metro or the L or the buses. So we can kind of gauge those metrics. And that's certainly something it takes a click of a button and we can make sure we include that as well.
You obviously can do that because you're so technical.
I'm not, they're the technical ones.
Thank you.
Any other questions on this? Okay, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
All right. So we are going to move on to the special use standards. For the ZBA to recommend that the City Council grant a special use, the ZBA must find that the proposed special use 1 is one of the listed special uses for the zoning district in which the property lies. Commercial indoor recreational facilities are allowed under the special use section of the B1A Business District and as an eligible special use for active ground floor use in the Central Street District. Number 2, it complies with the purposes and policies of the comprehensive general plan and the zoning ordinance. The use is compliant with the zoning ordinance and the comprehensive general plan because the project promotes growth and adaptive reuse of this existing commercial structure. Number 3, this will not cause a negative cumulative effect in combination with the existing special uses or as a category of land use. There are no other special uses in the immediate area, and the proposed commercial indoor recreation facility is complementary to nearby commercial uses. Number 4, does not interfere or diminish the value of property in the neighborhood. The proposed business will occupy an otherwise vacant existing commercial space and will not generate an abundance of noise or parking and traffic issues if it's developed in accordance with the testimony presented here. Number 5, is adequately served by public facilities and services. The building is served by adequate streets, sidewalks, and is in close proximity to multiple public transportation uses. Number 6, does not cause undue traffic congestion. This facility is located less than 250 feet from the Central Street Metro Station. All employees use public transportation, and customers typically carpool or ride share to this type of business in accordance to the testimony. Number 7, preserves significant historical and architectural resources. This building and the property are not identified as a local historic landmark. The building facade was renovated approximately 5 years ago. No exterior changes are currently proposed other than signage. Number 8, preserves significant natural and environmental resources. No significant natural or environmental resources exist on this site. Number 9, complies with all other applicable regulations. The project complies with all other applicable regulations to move forward with the next step in the special use project. Can somebody please call the motion?
I move that in the case of 2510 Green Bay Road, 19 ZMJV-0060, that we recommend City Council approve the special use for Lock Chicago, provided that they put their business in place in accordance with the documents presented here.
Can I get a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. Your variation has been granted. Our next case is 1000 Florence Avenue. Is Patrick Coleman in?
No, he's not.
He is not. Are you appearing for him, sir?
Yes, I am.
Okay.
My name is Marty Maroney. I work with Jacob Brandeis Architects, and the address is 1800 Hawthorne Lane, West Chicago, Illinois.
Patrick Coleman, contract purchaser, applies for major zoning relief for a second-story addition that aligns with the first floor and for an addition to a detached garage in the R3 two-family residential district. The applicant requests a 3.5-foot street side yard setback where 15 feet is required, zoning code section 6847A2, and a 1.41 north interior side yard setback where 5 feet is required, zoning code section 6847A3 for the house addition. A 5.2-foot street side yard setback for the garage addition where 15 feet is required, zoning code section 6847B2, and a 10-foot street side yard setback for a roofed deck where 15 feet is required, zoning code section 6847C2. The Zoning Board of Appeals is the determining body for this case. Documents included as part of the record include variation application submitted May 2nd, 2019, zoning analysis, plat of survey, site plan, elevations, photos of property from applicant, photos of similar properties, image of property, aerial view of property, zoning map of property, and Dapper meeting minutes excerpt of July 3rd, 2019.
Thank you, sir. Could you go through your proposal?
Okay, so,
Could you speak into the mic?
Yes. Can you hear me? All right. As Patrick asked me to come to the property, he is looking to purchase the property, but in his opinion, he felt like we needed to do something there because this property needs major renovation. So when I walked into the property, the first thing that I noticed, from the first floor to the second floor, they have a staircase that is in the front, and it goes straight up. And the problem is it was a complete fall hazard. It was not to code. So that was the first issue. The second issue, on the second floor, there was one bedroom going into another bedroom. So there was no hallway. And then the third issue was that there was no bathroom up there either. Now, currently, this existing house is a 3-bedroom house. The bedroom downstairs is like an 8x8. It's not even to code. So what we are proposing here is to try to keep the shape of the house as is and invert the gable so that we were able to expand that second floor. And that's what we were showing. Those are the stairs. As I was going up there, I had to hold on to both walls. So technically this house, even if it's purchased, you cannot put a second-story addition on there because you have a 15-foot setback on one side and you have a 5-foot setback on the other. You only got 5 feet. So that's not going to work. So we tried to come up with a solution so that we could just extend those existing walls going straight up, as it's not a 2-story. The massing is still the same. The only difference is that the peak of the roof is going to change about 3 feet taller. And that's it.
Aren't you also planning to put an addition on an artist studio on the garage?
Correct.
Okay, there's a couple questions in the packet that I just want you to address. It says that the proposed deck will be pushed towards the north side of the property. How much?
North side of the property. Actually, that front porch, it will be 7 feet from the property line.
It'll be 7, and now currently from the property line,
There is no porch. The
Yeah.
covered, there's an existing covered porch. There's an existing covered porch that we are going to keep as is.
Okay.
And then in addition to that, it's going to be an open deck with the trellis.
with the roof,
Trellis.
trellis,
Open.
so there won't be a roof.
No roof.
Okay.
It's just 2x10s going horizontally just to give shade as the sun passes through.
And so that is on the front facade of the house?
No, that's on the rear. The front's
okay, that's what I thought. That's what I
yeah.
thought. Okay.
Yeah, it's on the rear. The front stays the same.
Right.
The way that we are going to approach this is we're going to keep the gables as is in the front and the back. We're going to cut the middle of the roof and then create an inverted gable so that it still keeps the massing of the house, except that new ridge will be 3 feet higher than the existing ridge that comes from the front and the back.
But it still won't be the tallest house on the block?
No, it's still the massing, this house, when you look at it from the front, I know the postcard shows that it shows the elevation. It shows that elevation. No, the left elevation.
Go back one.
Go down one. That one. And that's on Lee Street.
Mm-hmm.
So the roof, the gable end that you see there is new. The roofing is existing. So we just tried to find a way to not create a second story addition, but being able to have that second story tucked into the roof.
Have you had any conversations with the neighbors immediately to your north?
No, I have not.
Do you know if the owners have?
I don't think they have. Oh.
You get an opportunity to come up and comment. Thank you, ladies. Okay, so my next question is about the windows on the north side of the property. Are they compliant to the building code or the ones you plan on installing?
Those, are you talking about the basement ones? Those are existing openings.
The ones on the north side of the building?
On the opposite side,
Yes.
correct? Yeah. Whatever is shown is existing. We're not adding in the basement.
But I think that there was some concern about the windows on the north facade of the house because the house is so close to the home to the north. And it's a fire rating issue, isn't it, Melissa?
Correct, because the north facade of the house is within 3 feet of the property line. There are building code issues with windows. There are ways around it where you can get certain kinds of rated windows. The property owners are aware of it and they're looking into it. They'll have to comply with the code one way or another.
Thanks.
Actually, I have no issue if we need to take those out.
Okay,
None at all.
thank you. Any other questions for the petitioner? Thank you, sir. I think you have some people here that would like to comment on your project.
Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone here that'd like to speak with the project? Because it's getting late, I'm going to ask you to keep your comments brief. If the person before you says what you wanted to say, just say, I agree with them. Could you please step up? I don't have you on the sign-in list. Okay, so could you just step up? Did I swear you in? The whole truth, nothing but the truth. Okay, thank you.
My name is Judy Yeager, and my husband and I live to the north of 1000 Florence, and we have had extensive conversations with the present residents and owners, and we're feeling that we have to be realistic. The lots are very small, our lot and their lot, and there isn't much space. We also know that if anybody that's going to purchase the property is going to have to do a lot of work, and they're going to want more space than that space allows right now. So, and it won't be the tallest house on the block because we have a brand new construction to the north of us. So we're kind of getting used to changes, and it's we're fine with it.
Are you the closest house to this project, ma'am?
Yes, we are.
You are, and you're in support of this project?
Yes.
Thank you so much. Is there anyone else here who would like to speak to this project? Ladies, it's your opportunity. No one? Okay, thank you. Then we'll close the record unless you want to sum up. Nothing? You're good? Okay, thank you so much. Any questions from the board?
Not a question, but I've been by this property. I walk by it frequently, and there is no question that it has to be, if it's either a tear down, which allows you to do nothing, or it is, as you pointed out, something that will require quite a lot of work. And I, looked at the plans. It's no question that this is a very positive enhancement of the property, and I think it will ultimately enhance values for the neighbors immediate and, in the vicinity overall. So I think that it's a good project.
I'm glad to see this property redeveloped because something has to go here, and I'm glad that the neighbors are used to change. Anybody else? Okay. Thank you. I will read the standards. Okay. Variance standards for the ZBA to recommend approval of this, they must find that the proposed variance, 1, will not have a substantial adverse impact on the use, enjoyment, or property values of adjoining properties. The surrounding properties are a mix of single-family structures and a public park. The massing height and size of the proposed additions are consistent with the proximate buildings. Number 2 is in keeping with the intent of the zoning ordinance. The proposed addition promotes the public health, morals, general welfare, and objectives of the comprehensive general plan, as well as enhances the taxable value of a currently dilapidated property. Number 3 has a hardship or practically difficulty that is peculiar to the property. The substandard corner lot size and width are existing and cannot be altered without impacting adjacent properties. Number 4, property owners would suffer a particular hardship or practical difficulty as distinguished from a mere inconvenience. Construction without zoning relief would result in a considerably narrower and unusable second floor that would not provide reasonable space for a future family or accommodate needed code updates. Number 5 is not based exclusively upon a desire to extract additional income from the property or public benefit to the whole will be derived. The proposed repairs and additional habitable space will rehabilitate a currently dilapidated and unsafe property and improve the quality of the neighborhood. Number 6 does not have a hardship or practical difficulty that was created by any person having an interest in the property. The property was platted and construction at its size and width prior to the current ownership. Number 7 is the minimum change necessary to alleviate the particular hardship or practical difficulty. The proposed addition to the existing residence is the minimum necessary to provide a habitable and functional residence within the existing lot limitations. The proposed roof deck is modest in size and sited to comply with the interior side yard setback to minimally impact adjacent neighbors. Due to the small footprint on the primary residence, additional usable space provided in the garage addition reduces the bulk of the primary residence and is sited to minimally impact adjacent neighbors. Can I have someone call the motion, please?
I move in the case of 1000 Florence Avenue, 19ZMJV-0062, that we approve the project contingent upon the building being finished according to the documents that have been presented here. So you're approved. Thank you for.
Just a minute. We need a second.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, we need to vote. Any second?
A second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. Okay, now, please. Thank you so much for your testimony, and you have been passed. Thank you so much. Okay, the next project is 1321 Brummel. Is Farouk Ali here? You, Mr. Ali? Okay. Are you speaking for him, sir?
I am to start, yes.
Okay, just a minute. Melissa will read it into the,
Additional packets because they are different from what I see in your packet.
okay, we're going to continue that as Exhibit 1 for this case. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Melissa, could you read that into the record?
Farouk Ali, property owner, applies for major zoning relief to convert a two-family residence into a multiple-family four-unit residence in the R4 General Residential District. The applicant requests a lot width of 40 feet existing, where 50 feet is required for multiple-family residential uses, zoning code section 6855. 4 dwelling units where 2 dwelling units are permitted due to the lot size, zoning code section 6854. 0 additional parking spaces where 3 additional parking spaces are required, zoning code sections 616-2, table 16B, and a building height of 3 stories, 31.5 feet at the highest point of the flat roof, where a maximum building height of 35 feet or 2.5 stories is permitted, zoning code section 6858. The Zoning Board of Appeals makes a recommendation to City Council, the determining body for this case. Documents included as part of the record include variation application submitted June 6th, 2019, letter from applicant, affordable unit description, plat of survey, zoning analysis, site plan, floor plans, elevations, neighborhood photos from applicant, letters of objection, image of property, aerial view of property, zoning map of property, Dapper meeting minutes excerpt of July 3rd, 2019, as well as, I believe, one additional letter of opposition that was handed out at the beginning of the meeting, and revisions from the applicant that reflect the 3rd story coming off of the top per the Dapper recommendation.
Right, absolutely.
Thank you. Could you describe your property?
Yes, my name is Doug Clark.
Hi, Doug Clark. Your address for the record?
1013 Rosemary Terrace in Deerfield, Illinois.
Thank you.
The project that we're proposing is a addition to the existing 2-story apartment building, adding 2 additional units to the rear of the building, as you can see in the site plan. They would be 2-bedroom units, one on the first floor and one on the second floor, identical to each one.
So this project that you're describing is different in the way that you gave us this packet. It's not the one that we had already had.
The only difference, no, it is the same project. The only difference is the elevation. Initially, we had a roof over the stair. We're anticipating putting the air conditioning units on the roof for maintenance, and we kind of wanted to protect the stair and offer a stair up to the top. But I think the Dapper meeting made a reasonable point that it looked a little funny, and that can be accessed through a scuttle in the top of the stair. So that came off. If you want to jump to that, if you would like to look at that right now, or we can.
Well, I just wanted to make sure that we were hearing the same thing that we had already
Absolutely.
received.
No, it's the exact
Okay.
same thing. Yeah.
You can continue, please.
Okay.
Thank you.
One of the units is proposed to be an affordable unit out of the 2 new units that are being added. This would make for a total of 4 units for the property. We're asking for a variation of lot coverage at this point, I think, as Melissa had shared. We are required for 4 total units, 10,000 square feet. We currently have 5. There's a minimum lot width that the lot is currently a 40-foot wide lot, and we would be required to have 50 for the additional 2 units. And parking is also in question because we are kind of landlocked. We can't get back to the rear of the property to add surface parking. So we are unable to provide the additional 1.5 per unit. In terms of the site plan that you have on sheet 1, it outlines the addition in back at about 660 square feet per floor. The entrance is off to the south or to the east side of that as well. The units themselves, on the following page is simply the existing, or the basement plan, my apologies, which will be mechanical and storage for tenants. The sheet 3, which is the existing building itself, just as a reference to the 2 units that do exist on that property. And your sheet 4 is the new floor plan layout showing the 2 bedrooms, a living and dining space, and a kitchen. And those are all accessed through a stair off to the east side. The elevations for this are as simple as they can be. Really nothing much to comment about. They're all abiding by code for light and vent and egress as well. The primarily the 2 units in size will only allow 2 people occupancy, so the additional load on the property is minimal compared to if more than 2 were allowed to stay in that property. The owner had shared at this stage, because I believe there was a comment through Dapper about whether there was 1 unit or 2 units to be offered as affordable. He feels that financially he could consider 2 units to be affordable. That would make 50% of the total units as affordable housing. I think I'll let Farouk kind of discuss the affordability criteria. But for the most part, I think the idea to provide more affordability is paramount with him. I think we tried to provide as much space as we could based on the site plan and the zoning restrictions. We are not in any violations of the setbacks. So the addition is as big as it can be based on the setbacks, and thus it sort of, that was the driver behind the size of the addition itself. We're staying within the 5-foot setback on either side. We've actually reduced the width of the addition on the west side to stay within the existing setback, even though the existing building itself is encroaching in on that west side setback. And the rear yard setback we're staying within. So that kind of drove the size and shoehorning as much as we can. That is, in terms of the packet that was sent out, it mentioned the roof and unenclosed stair, and again, we're not going to be doing that at this point. There will be an access at the top to get to the rooftop for the air conditioning condensers. That is the whole of it. If you have any questions, happy to ask.
Questions for the petitioner?
So the house next door, so this is, looking at, so there's one house next door that's very similar in size to the one that you have.
Yes, there's another 2-story apartment building to the west.
And that's very similar in size to the one that you have now.
It is identical, I believe, although I haven't been inside.
And have you had conversations with them?
I have not.
Have you? Because this is a pretty big game changer for the next door neighbor to suddenly have.
Sir, I'm going to ask you to speak to the mic so that we can record your testimony, just because I can hardly hear you. Thank you.
My name is Farouk Ali, 1321 Bromell Street.
Good evening.
So,
I'm sorry, what's your address?
1321 Bromell Street. That's one of them. So basically, we already have one big building on the left side, and exactly like right after the one which we have on the west side. We also have another big. If you can just scroll down the pictures.
So next to your next door neighbor, there is another apartment building.
So
to the east is a 3-story, 6-unit building, and then right to the west is.
Just go a little bit. Go up. No, go up. Yeah.
There we go.
Yeah, that's sure.
So on the both sides, it's only like two. We have 1 unit.
Could you speak into the mic, sir?
Sure. So there are two, like one are our property and another property, my neighbors. And then you can see that on the both sides, we still have the big buildings on both sides. So I totally understand, but we were unable to speak to our neighbors yet, but I feel that we should speak to them.
I think you're going to get your opportunity this evening. Yes.
So, yeah.
Any other questions?
If you were to scroll up, just there's another view to the west. I'm sorry, then down.
I think I've seen that. Just go down a little bit. Up more. I think there was more up here.
Yeah, there were two pictures. Well, they were front pictures and then the rear pictures, just so you get an idea of what exists. That is the subject property. That's from the front, and they are labeled. That's from the front as well. The other is the west property at the rear, if you were in the subject property's backyard. And then to the east, those are the two rear. And basically, that's front of the subject property and rear of the subject property. There was one to the east as well, just so you had a sense for what was going on to the far east.
It's a little bit hard, it's a little bit difficult to see where the smaller 2-story property is in connection with this. You seem to be highlighting the apartment buildings, but I can't really.
Yeah, there is a picture of the west rear unit.
It's almost easiest if you look at this aerial view here. There you go. So this is the subject property. This is the other building that's the same size. And then you've got a big apartment building right here and right here.
Right.
And then some more modest stuff across the street.
If you were to look at your pictures in your packet, the very last photo, it's a little bit easier to see them grouped together than split up this way. There's a photo of the neighbor to the west, and that's the front. And then, of course, the rear of the neighbor to the west. Below that is the neighbor to the east, which is what you were referring to. And looking at the backyard, that is that same building, that same 2-story apartment, but the rear of it, which is the view of the east neighbor from the property's backyard.
I think your labels are missed. I think the picture on the upper right of your 4 square photos is the east neighbor.
Right.
And the one
That
below
could
it
be,
is the
yes.
west
I
neighbor.
think yes, you're absolutely right. My west neighbor is my east neighbor. Thank you so much.
And
My
on your
apologies.
photo on the lower left,
That is
the
the
neighbor
west
to the
neighbor.
south.
Yeah.
When I was a child, I lived next door to that, so I know this
Oh,
area
okay.
well.
No, you're absolutely right. But so that east is a west neighbor, and that's the 2-story building that you're referring to, just so you can see it there. Thank you.
Melissa, this is affordable housing for 10 years only, right?
Correct. Since there is a proposal for a total of 4 units on the property, this is not a covered development. There is no affordable housing requirement, but staff is requesting it based on the variations requested, which we then traditionally do for a 10-year period. And alternatively, staff did discuss this a little bit with the applicant, but housing staff has suggested an alternative that instead of having the 2 new units both be affordable, that it would also be acceptable to make one of the existing units affordable instead, because with the way the units are laid out and their size requirements, the new units can house 2 people each, and the existing units can house up to 4 people. So we'll get the same number of people housed in one affordable unit if it's the existing unit. So it's kind of up to the applicant's preference if he would prefer that.
And what is the size of the existing units? The back units, the new units are 660 square feet, which is pretty tight. How large are the existing units?
900.
900? And they're two-bedroom?
They are two-bedroom.
Okay.
Two-bedroom plus something.
Mhm.
A little bit small for a bedroom, but yeah, two-bedroom.
And with the exception of losing the north facades, the windows, you're not making any internal changes to the existing.
Just updating the windows in those rear bedrooms for egress and lighting them.
And this,
They're already pretty bright right now.
Can I ask you when you purchased the property?
Recently, like back in November.
I'm sorry?
November 2018.
11 months ago?
Almost, yes.
Okay.
with the proposed addition, the only access point is that new proposed stair
From the front, yes.
Yes, access to the new.
to the second floor, well, the first floor and second floor.
Any other questions? Carol, do you have any questions? No? Okay. Thank you. I'm going to open up for public comment. Do you have another comment, sir?
Just wanted to, so you guys have asked the address for where I'm living?
I'm sorry, could you speak into the mic?
You guys have asked the address for the where actually I'm living, or where, what about the property? So my address where I live is 1944 Westwood. So I thought that you guys are asking for which property we are referring to. So for the reference, the address for my address?
Yes, your address.
1944 Westwood Avenue.
Yes.
So just one.
Is that in Evanston, sir? Chicago, okay. Okay. So, let's open up to public comment. A couple of people signed in for this. I'm going to read your names. Please approach the mic. Amy Tucker at 1325 Brummel.
Okay. Hello, my name's Amy Tucker. I reside in 1325 Brummel Street, the house right next to.
Right next door,
Yes.
okay.
So as owners of 1325 Brummel Street, we request that this proposal be rejected. From our 25 years of living in Brummel Street, we have seen a drastic uptick in limited parking spaces within this area. The addition of 2 more stories would greatly reduce the limited parking spaces we already have available. In addition, this would cause current residents, especially older ones, to park and walk in blocks further away from their residence. Moreover, the four-story addition would interfere with our ability to obtain tenants and sell a property within this area due to the needed parking for the potential tenants residing in 1321. Also, the 4-story would raise property taxes within this area. This would cause landlords in Brummel Street to raise the rent, and this rent increase will cause current tenants who have lived here for a very long time to search for more affordable units, which will essentially counteract Mr. Ali's idea of affordable housing. Furthermore, the introduction of more tenants in bigger buildings would negatively impact the environment. From Mr. Ali's purchase of the property in 2018, he has not been an effective absentee landlord. For instance, his garbage can was overflowing with garbage because it had not been picked up by local waste management due to Mr. Ali and his tenants' refusal to follow the trash pickup schedule. This resulted in the presence of raccoons within the area. Moreover, his tenants opted to throw their trash in our trash can because of the overflowing of garbage that was not picked up in their building. Currently, the side of Mr. Ali's property has a broken fence. If these simple property maintenances were an issue for Mr. Ali with a 2-story addition, how could he effectively maintain a 4-story unit since the addition of more tenants would result in more maintenance, which is already a struggle for this property owner? Due to the potentially negative outcomes from limited parking, increased taxes, and negative impacts on the environment, I ask that the council reconsider the proposal.
Thank you. Okay, I have another person here to speak, Joanne Heslop. Oh, could you just step to the front, say your name and address?
I'm Joanne Heslop, and I live at 128 Asbury in an 18-unit condominium building. And I'm here on behalf of the board. I'm part of the board, and we oppose it because of parking, pretty much everything she said.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Any questions for the respondent? Would you like to respond to what your neighbors have had to say? Please approach the mic. Does anybody else here want to speak to this? Just a minute. There's a gentleman here. Sir, just a minute, Mr. Ali. Because you both, especially the little one, have been so patient.
He's been very impatient. So, my name is Jeffrey Gayaris. I am at 141 North Asbury, and my concern is parking. There's, from what I've read, that there's supposed to be 3 additional spots located under the zoning. As my neighbors have stated, parking is very tight. Our condo association, there's usually multiple people with multiple vehicles in the neighborhood, and you have a right to as many vehicles as you'd like, but parking in this area is very tight, as is now. People coming home and not being able to find parking, especially when we have cleaning every other week in Evanston. It's really a concern for us. It's just a quality of life, and it'd also be a disservice to the tenants now and future tenants not to have parking for themselves. We're not right by a CTA station. There's a couple of bus routes that come by, but and I assume you can bike, but this is Chicago, Evanston area, so the weather is pretty torrid and unpredictable. So parking would be my primary concern that affects me and the tenants at 141 Asbury directly. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Mr. Ali, would you like to respond to your neighbors?
Thank you, I totally understand your concerns too.
Approaching with exhibit number 1 for this case.
Yes. So, just want to share. And,
Thank you.
If we can.
Oh my gosh, okay. Maybe. That's it. Okay.
Well, while we try to get this together, can I ask you a question?
Sure.
So you have 2 apartments there that you rent currently. Can I ask you, and there are 2 bedrooms with about 900 square feet. Can I ask you what you rent them for?
Around 1475.
$14.75? And so you would anticipate renting the new 1-bedroom apartments on an affordable basis for how much?
Somewhere between $1,100 to $1,200.
I see. So the 900 square foot at $14.75, what would you rent the 900 square foot unit for if you only did 1 affordable unit? What would that be?
Around $1,350 to $1,375, or maybe like $1,400, because now
Today is 16th.
So this is basically, I read these comments too before. So this is today's video. for the same property around 645, 641, 45 in between. So just wanted to show the property surrounding and about the parking concerns which we have seen so far. And as far as 645 is already a peak hour. Most of the people already back home. So, if you assume the parking moving forward the same way, this is what actually the area, exact same area as of today, 641. So just wanted to show.
So this building, there's no alley in back of these buildings, right, because the river. And there is no CTA, right? There's no parking
Correct.
for this building?
Correct, that is correct.
Currently, okay.
July 2019. I'm near to 1321 Bromley Street. I just wanted to show about the parking status. So it's already 6:41 right now. So here we can see parking. It's already 6:41. So you can see this is 1321 Bromley Street. You can see the parking here. Space parking.
So this video is to show us that there's sufficient parking on the street at 641 today?
That is correct.
Just a minute. Just a minute.
Ample parking right here. You can see it's already 6:42 right now. You can see it's 6:42. And you see parking, ample parking. Whoever is saying this parking, it's not the right thing. You can see parking here. So 6:45.
So your point, sir?
So my point is definitely, I totally understand concern and I respect whatever like everybody is suggesting. Definitely there's parking available, but that's not the case. My case is, if you can see the recommendation from the DEPA, the city has been reduced in affordable housing units in the last decades and is in need of new affordable housing. It's not about only the addition in the building, it's about what actually we are looking for today. Are we looking to accommodate affordable families, or are we looking for only for the parking? I totally understand this is one of the concerns. This is not only the concern in the city or in the same neighborhood, but it's the same concern is everywhere, wherever we are going in Chicago, especially in Winston. We also have the same issue, but on the other end, we also have a bigger issue about nobody would love to or like to have the affordable families in the place. And that's why whenever they suggest that, instead of going to one, we should go for two. I said, that's fine. Because the ultimate object is to assist these needy people. That's not only to adding 2 more units, it's also. So I'm very much open if there's any suggestion, if we have to accommodate anything else, definitely we would love to. But at the end of the day, it's more like, it's more, something more to giving back to the community. I totally understand. Down the road, more vehicles will be on the road. Eventually, we have to accommodate these vehicles at the end of the day. Every year we have more vehicles on the road. And if we only consider the parking, we may not be able to end up with anything. I believe up to our council that, you should gauge what actually we are looking as a community. Are we looking for helping the more affordable families or only the parking? I totally understand. The only issue is we have a landlock on the back and we cannot offer the parking on our back. Otherwise, I can have something in the basement, like the basement parking, something. But at this point of time, unfortunately, we are landlocked and we don't have any other access from back. So that's the only thing. And I respect whatever they're saying. They're very right. But this is what actually we are offering to the community. We are giving back to the community. It's 100% whatever the addition is, 100% going back to the community.
Can you address the maintenance concerns?
Oh yes, so we as soon as I heard about that, we have made already the roster that who's going to take care of those things. So I totally understand. And the fence is basically it's on my neighbor's property, so I have called them like once only. But they were, so we cannot cross that property unless we spoke to my neighbor. So that's why I'm just waiting. But I mean, I totally understand, and I can give my words today that I will reach out to them once again. I'll make sure that whatever the maintenance concerns are, we are going to address those concerns for sure. And as soon as, I mean, I'm also making sure that we maybe I mean, once we have all these 4 units, probably I'm going to add a property management company to look after all.
Or you're going to hire a property management company for it?
I mean, I can assure you that we are going to address all of these concerns, like as far as the maintenance concern. We'll make sure that we are going to address.
Well, this is a public hearing and your neighbors are here. I hope you can come to some agreement with them.
Sure, ma'am. And
while we are
I
here.
respect that. I mean, we met them before, so I respect them and totally understand their concern and 100% agree, and we'll make sure that we are going to do all
Okay.
the efforts we can.
Okay. Any other questions for this petitioner?
Well, just in terms of comments, I think that one of the biggest problems I have in addressing the standards is that the hardship here is totally self-created because the property was purchased less than a year ago, knowing the finiteness of the land, knowing that there was no parking, knowing that if you wanted to add units to the property, that would come with a parking requirement. My experience of this area is that parking is very tight, and the neighbors have attested to that as well. One of the other big issues that I have with this is there is really limited green space there.
Sure.
And so to cover the backyard, the next door neighbor now has not just the density of the big buildings around, but also has most of the backyard next door taken up too. So that becomes just a little tiny postage stamp of green that is left between them and the trains. And so I'm just not sure I understand how we can find in the standards that that this is not a self-created hardship.
Sure, I totally understand.
Sir, could you speak into the mic?
Sure. Can I ask my architect to respond?
Certainly.
The cleanest gas roof we discussed.
Yeah, there was some discussion with the fact that we were taking up more rear yard. Part of the thinking, not only to get to the roof with the stair and that type of thing for AC, was to generate a green roof. That was something that was in the back of our minds to, we were going to structure it well enough so one could do that.
Had you decided to do that?
We have not decided to do that. It's certainly an option on the table.
That's an extremely expensive proposition.
That's why it's on the table and, and not written in stone. But it's certainly one that's. I mean, one can begin to.
I'm just not quite sure I see how the neighbor benefits from a green roof. I mean, the environment will benefit, but the neighbor will still be looking at a vinyl-sided addition in what used to be a green backyard. And I think that affects quality of life. I'm troubled by this on a number of fronts, and primarily because I think that rents in the neighborhood around Brummel are fairly affordable. So the differential is not huge. And yes, we need more affordable units. That is a fact. But I'm not sure that we obtain them at the expense of the neighbors and the environment. I'm just not sure that this is the right way to go about it. I'm having a problem with those standards, to be honest.
So just to address back to the green space, definitely this is something we can consider. As far as not 100% the 100% green roof, but definitely we can plan. We can address those issues too. I mean, as you just mentioned, we may not right from the beginning, we may not be able to go 100% to green roof, but we can definitely address those issues to incorporate with our roof, not 100%, but maybe like 50% or 25% we can cover with the green roofs.
Is that on this current proposal that you just gave us?
We don't have it because this has just come up, but we discussed it before, and this is something we can definitely consider that.
Okay, well, it's not a variance, so it won't come back before us if you're going to change your proposal, but,
Well, ultimately, we're a recommending body on this.
oh, yeah, so that, before a city council meeting.
Yeah, so this is just to address to your concern, you are very right, and we can consider that like 20%, 25% of the roof, we can just make sure that we are going to incorporate with this.
Okay.
And this is again, just giving it back to the community, that's 100% whatever the addition is going back to the community. It's not like whatever the affordable, like the rental is, we are going to charge those, just 100% whatever we have discussed.
Well, let's see what our architect has to say. What do you think?
Is this the time for comments? Or-
Yes. This is the time for comments. I'm going to close the record, ask you to sit down, we'll have our
Thank you,
comments.
thank you, sir, thank you.
Well, I was debating in myself the same things that Mafia was mentioning, how we deal with the available yard space in the backyard because you're taking all of it. And it is a kind of a building that will be up to the absolute maximum of allowable setbacks. So, but let me comment on the main issues. Is the parking issue balanced with the affordable housing? I believe in this zoning board, we always give the advantage to the affordable housing kind of in front of the parking issue because we need more housing no matter I would not say no matter, but with the trouble of less parking available for these new affordable housing. So in this aspect, and also having in mind that this is self-created for sure hardship, I would prefer the affordable housing in front of the parking issue. For the rest of the things, I don't see how you can make more backyard space. It's simply impossible. I can see that very, very clearly. The bulk of the building, it's okay. It's not in contrast with the adjacent properties. It is longer than the immediately adjacent property, but it is smaller than the ones on both sides of the two properties. Practical things, if you want to make a green roof, that is always, I would say, wishable, and you can do it. It is very expensive. It's very hard to maintain, and you should put more effort in that, and your neighbors should be happier if you put bigger efforts in maintaining the property, including if you have a green roof. The AC units on the top, I appreciate the fact that you removed this ugly thing from the roof over the staircase. It's right. Be careful with the code in two aspects. Anything that is on a roof and need maintenance, more than 16 feet above ground, has to have a ladder to it. And if your AC units are closer than 10 feet to the outline of the building, you have to have a guardrail. So be careful with these two things because we don't want you to come back to us and say, I need a guardrail on the roof. So otherwise, once again, I think the balance in my mind goes towards yes for this. The concerns are concerns, but the affordable housing is the thing that for me weighs more. Thank you.
Other comments?
I share some of the concerns about kind of the livability of the spaces that you're creating on your site and the impact on the livability on your adjacent property to the west. I do have concerns about the public benefit of, in the cases I saw it proposed in the packet, of the potentially the two units, the two 660 square foot units being allocated to affordable housing. I do struggle with the public benefit aspect of that. So I'm still working through this in my head.
I also have a problem with the exchange between the parking and the affordable housing units. While we do need affordable housing units, like Commissioner McCauley said, I think this neighborhood is affordable. And so there are some there. But the parking issue, I understand that you gave us a video of what's going on there, but I think that the parking is already an issue. Even, the video shows what it is at a certain point in time, but overall, I'm sure that has a problem. I'm sure of it. Please come to the mic.
I 100% agree with you, but after a certain time period, definitely the parking is an issue. Like we can say like 6 o'clock, 5:50, 5:30. After that, definitely, I mean, wherever you go in Chicago, especially in Winston, there will be parking issue no matter what.
Well, sir, I've been informed that with that comment, I've reopened the record. I'm going to let you finish, but I'm going to also let your neighbors come up.
Sure. So this is just to respond to that.
You're finished?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Anyone that'd like to, now that the record's reopened, anybody that'd like to come up and respond to his comments?
We have three things. First, his video was only for today and when it's warm outside and people go out. When it comes to like the fall and winter, I can guarantee you that people are fighting for parking. I've seen it for myself that people have been 3 cars fighting for 1 parking. And on top of that, for the fence, I don't know if his photo has the photo of the fence, but I took a photo today and the fence is his, because the person who bought the house originally built that fence. And this is the photo of the fence currently as of today. And on top of it, for the rent, he said that he would put the affordable housing around $1,300. My parents rent a house up the apartment above us for $1,200 for a 3-bedroom apartment. So it's not really affordable if he's doing affordable housing for 2 bedrooms for $1,300 when we have 3 bedrooms for $1,200. I don't see how that's affordable.
Thank you. Anyone else like to speak?
Again, my name is Joanne Heslop. Parking is horrible. I have come out the alleyways. People are blocking the alley where it makes it almost impossible to turn off out of the alley onto Brummel to turn westbound. And this cars parked all along the street. He's showing a video from today, but if you go over there right now, there's parking, there's people parked illegally all over the place because there's no place for them to park, so they park up close to the crosswalks and they get tickets all the time. And right now it is warm outside and people are just not home from work yet. We fight for parking spots in my area. People come from that street and park on our street, on Dobson. I'm closer to Dobson. They park from Brummel. We see them walking from that, through the alley to park. And I couldn't do that if I do have a parking spot, but there are people in my building that do not have a parking spot. I personally could not walk from that area to where they're parking because I would, especially in the wintertime. So parking is a very big issue over there. garbage, rats, and if they're not gonna keep up with their property, it's just gonna create more rodents in the alleyways that we're already fighting against. So I do think it's unfair, and I hope the council listens to us. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Please, ma'am.
My name is Mary Tucker. I live on 1325 Burmo for 21 years. So I've been there a long time than him. So if I'm unable to have in a parking, his resident, his tenant going to have a parking. 6 o'clock, the time he took those parking, he took those pictures, is the time people they'll go to work. At that time is the time everybody go to work, nobody cannot stay home, they have to go to work. You're going to see a parking. Start by 4:30 to 5, 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock, you cannot see any spot to park in your car. If you have to park in, you have to go to that sun. If you don't want that sun, you can find in some parking Asbury on the street, on Asbury. Are you going to make 4 units? And then when he make a 4 unit, his house is next to my building. That's his building, that's my building. So that means we are a neighbor. When he put another, my house is going to be darker because the sun not going to flash on my building anymore. Because his building going to cover my building because it's going to be higher than mine. So I see that's unfair. That's not, I pay a tax. So it's not going to be good for me. And then I'm not going to be appreciate somebody to take my privacy from me. It's like he's going to take my privacy from me. I don't like it do it. I don't want it build that place because I'm the one going to be hurt. Okay, I understand they're coming too. They're not next to him to going to get the problem. They leave a lot of garbage on the floor. They pick up garbage, a lot of mess. And for 21 years, I live there. There's the first landlord leave garbage like this on the floor, don't clean, and then raccoon, a lot. It's a mess, you know. And then his tenant have to come in on my garbage can to put garbage there, you know, to put garbage in there. That's not fair for me. That's not fair for me. I don't say if he want to rebuild a place or do whatever he want to do, not on Brumel, 1321 Brumel. He don't deserve to get 4 units. And then another thing going to be happening, our tax going to be higher. Is only 2 flats I have. When they say his taxes go up, there's the same picture of the building. So mine going to be higher. And going to be higher for 2 flats. It's going to be higher, and he has a 4 flat because he want to run his business. He don't live there. He want to run his business. So he don't care about my neighbor. If he live with me on the same neighborhood, he will understand to don't make any unit or floor, whatever he want to make. Because he will understand the pain when you finish to work. You're tired, you cannot find a parking. You have to run, sometimes 12 o'clock at night. I'm finished to work, is around 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, 11:30. It's hard for me to get a parking. I have to look in all over the place to looking for parking, you know. And then if he build another unit to put it up 4 units, me what I'm going to do?
Thank you, ma'am, for your comment. Thank you. I think there was one more person here, so I'm going to let her speak. Thank you.
Hi,
My name is Michal Yariv. I live at 1013 Dewey. I just want to thank y'all for being here. I know it's late, and thank you for allowing all the comments this late into the night. My only comment is that, you spoke of having to make this trade-off between parking and affordability. And I think the other component that we leave out of this is in Evanston, we care about equity. And we sat here earlier this evening and had half of northern Evanston complaining about a variance that was being asked for, and they were providing 15 parking spots in garages for those folks. So when we look at this, and they're asking for 4 major variances here in an area where there's no parking already, I think we have to also add equity to that component and say, something's not right here. If we're going to, stop a developer in North Evanston, from adding something that the neighbors complain about, I think the same level of standard needs to apply here.
Thank you for your comment. Anybody else? Would you like to rebut?
Just want to clarify that the building addition is the same height as the existing building and the same height as the neighboring building. It won't be any taller. It's still a 2-story addition. So in terms of the existing sun issue, it would be the same. And I think there were just 3 variations that we were looking for, not 4. 3, not 4.
Okay, thank you so much. Okay, now I'm going to close the record. It's getting late. I'm going to read the standards. I'm going to remind everybody that we are not the determining body for this. This goes on to City Council after this. So whatever happens here, we've had our public hearing, and we will just vote on it and move it forward to City Council. Okay, for a variation to be recommended for approval, the ZBA must find that the proposed variation 1 will not have a substantial adverse impact on the use, enjoyment, or property values of adjoining properties. The proposed building addition and density will bring the property to closer similarities surrounding multifamily buildings with similar bulk and architectural style. I am not going to speak to the 3rd floor roof over the egress stair because I understand that you are not going to do that.
Well, can I disagree that standard has been met?
You can disagree that the standard has been met. Does anybody else disagree with that standard being met?
I don't think that standard has been met because I don't see that this is going to enhance the value of the adjacent properties. I think that covering the little bit of green space that is there and adding to the parking nightmare that currently exists is a deficit in the neighborhood.
Okay, so as we read the standards, if you disagree with any of the standards, then your final vote needs to be no. I am going to take a poll on each standard since this is a touchy case. So how many agree that the standard has not been met?
I agree.
1. How many agree that the standard has been met? 1. Okay, I agree that the standard has not been met. Okay. The second one is in keeping with the intent of the zoning ordinance. Although the property does not meet the required lot size, width, or parking for a multifamily residence, the zoning ordinance allows for consideration of zoning relief when a public benefit such as affordable housing is provided. The requesting zoning relief is substantially similar to the existing conditions on surrounding properties on the block. I'm going to take a vote for this standard being met. How many votes for this standard being met?
Yes.
Yes?
Yes.
Yes.
I'll say yes.
Okay, so this standard has been met. All right, has it hardship or practical difficulty that is peculiar to the property? The practical difficulty is that the surrounding properties feature a larger scale multifamily residential that dwarfs the subject property. Additionally, the property does not feature alley access. How many agree that the standard has been met?
It has not been met.
It has not been met, in my opinion.
Not in that.
So this standard has not been met. Okay. The property owner would suffer a particular hardship or practical difficulty as distinguished from a mere inconvenience. Without the requested zoning relief, the property can only feature a 2-family residence, which would not utilize the full potential of the property when compared to surrounding structures and density. How many agree with that? No?
It's faulty reasoning in my estimation.
Okay, no
I
in
don't
my
agree with
estimation? No?
Yes.
Yes, 1 yes. So this standard has not been met. Number 5, it is not based exclusively upon a desire to extract additional income from the property or public benefit to the whole will be derived. Can I get a vote on this standard being met?
With the affordable housing, I would say that that standard has been met. It does provide public benefit.
I agree as well, if we go with, especially if we go with the 2 affordable units.
The 2 affordable units? You as well? So this standard has, yes, been met. Okay, does not have the hardship or practical difficulty that was created by any person having an interest in the property. And I feel like the hardship was created by the current owner. I think the standard has not been met. Who else agrees?
I agree.
Okay, so this standard has not been met. Number 7, is limited to the minimum change necessary to alleviate the particular hardship or practical difficulty. The applicant proposes to construct an addition off the rear of the existing structure that will only be minimally visible from the street and complies with all other zoning requirements. The proposed, okay, I'm not going to read that one because that is off the table. Okay, how many agree this standard has been met? Has not been met, in my opinion.
Well, it's not the minimal amount of change, but there is once again, the public benefit component.
So is that a yes or no?
I'm conflicted on that, but I know how I'm going to vote on the final outcome.
Okay.
Hey, Carol, maybe you can do the motion.
So now I'm going to call for the motion, and this will move on to City Council. Out of our 7 standards, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 have not been met. 2 have been met. So when you make the motion, I don't know how to tell you to make it. Maybe Melissa can help you.
I don't have the number. So be careful with the motion because council members have to be careful with their voting yes or no. So this is a motion to move the petition for 1321 Brummel Street to be approved, going to the city council with the documents, the testimony of the neighbors and of the petitioners here, and with all other statements given here, with the recommendation for 2 affordable units.
All those in favor? Oh, second.
All those in favor?
No.
All those opposed?
Sorry.
Okay, with 4-0, I'm sorry, your motion has been denied. You will move on to City Council to resolve this issue. Thank you so much. Can I get a motion to adjourn, please?
I move.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Good night. Thank you for staying so late.